Chapter 1702. As she looked at the aggrieved Dustless, the resentment on Alice Field's face was completely wiped away, and a wisp of a heartfelt smile flashed on her jade-like face. "What's so funny?" Dustless rolled his eyes and asked. He felt that this girl was gloating. Sigh. Alice Phil frowned and sighed. Her delicate face gradually lost its luster. She said sadly, "Kisi wanted to kill the mother and daughter. I couldn't bear it. So we inevitably quarreled." "Kill the two of them? Are you referring to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka? Kisi seems to be a righteous partner. Is there no reason? He doesn't look like someone who would kill the innocent. Are you mistaken?" Dustless frowned. Although he was ruthless, as long as those people didn't resist and restrain themselves, he could let them go. "Of course there is a reason. Although what Kisi said is reasonable, I have already promised Tashimi and Osaka. If I hurt the two of them again, I can't accept it." "Alice Phil, you didn't do anything wrong." Dustless smiled and encouraged her loudly, "You did the right thing. Remember, you are a human with flesh and blood. You are not a puppet created according to Kisi's plan. There is no need to follow his will. So you agree with my way of doing things?" Alice Phil retracted her sadness and revealed a cheerful smile. "Of course I agree." Dustless smiled and reached out his hand. He added in his heart, "As long as Kisi likes it, no matter if it is right or wrong, I will stand on his opposite side." Alice Phil organized her thoughts and explained, "Miss Wumi, I just received news that Yadong Yayan from the Yadong family is also participating in this Holy Grail War. And the reason is related to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka. The reason why Kisi asked me to kill the two of them secretly was to prevent Yadong Yayan from finding out that Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin are living in our house. Otherwise, Yadong Yayan's berserker will very likely attack us. The enemy will also have an opportunity to take advantage of. Until now, Kisi is still afraid of Yanfeng Qi." "Is that the only reason?" Wei Gong Qisi's words make sense. Dustless nodded in agreement. This reason was barely acceptable. If Jantong Yayan really knew that Kuei and Ling were here, he would definitely lead the berserker army to attack the Einsbaron family. But, changing the topic, Dustless glanced at Alice and Phil suspiciously. "Then they can also live with Saber." "There's no need for me to live with them. Alice, Phil, I also think that the mother and daughter can sleep with me. Don't you trust my ability?" At the same time, Saber grumbled. For some reason, when she heard that Dustless was going to sleep with Ling and Kuei, she felt a little jealous. After all, they were allies in the trenches. It did not feel good to have them taken away from her just like that. Have the Hero King and the Conqueror King left. Noticing Saber's appearance, Dustless instinctively looked out of the window. The place where they were drinking was empty. The Hero King and the Conqueror King seemed to have left. This banquet could be considered the best banquet. If they were to meet again, they would fight to the death. That's a good idea, but it's impossible. Alice Phil's face was filled with worry. She decisively rejected the idea. "That's impossible. You're Qisi's master. What if he uses a command spell on you?" Although the probability of Wei Gong Qisi using a command spell on such a trivial matter was close to zero, nothing was absolute. It was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, Wei Gong Qisi was a person who was difficult to grasp. Moreover, in this Holy Grail War, all of Wei Gong Qisi's command spells remained intact because of Dustless. Until now, he had not used a command spell on Saber. Even if he were to use a command spell on Saber, it would not be a big deal. After all, the Holy Grail War was about to end. "So, I'll be the scapegoat this time?" Dustless glanced at Alice Phil in annoyance. He said in a troubled and depressed tone, "Doesn't that mean that it's useless for me to change rooms? Kuei and Ling will still be with me." "That's what I mean." Alice Phil nodded slightly. She looked at Dustless strangely and said, "You're just a heroic spirit. Why do you have to care so much?" Hey. You're talking as if heroic spirits have no human rights." Dustless made a scary expression. Unexpectedly, Alice Phil did not care. Instead, she made a face at him. She was not afraid of Dustless's threat at all. "I'm destined to be the scapegoat this time." Wu Chen looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. It was a sad thing to have such a troublemaking master. "Scapegoat? It's not as serious as you said. At most, I'll let you be a temporary bodyguard." As if she thought of something, Alice Phil's eyes rolled. She looked like a sly fox. "Even though Kuei Dosaka and Tashimi Dosaka have been married for many years and even had 2 children, we were bathing together just now. I know her figure." Cough, cough, cough. Noticing that Alice Phil was getting further and further away from the topic, Wu Qin couldn't help but cough twice to interrupt Alice Phil's speech. He opened his mouth and deliberately changed the topic to Saber. As you can see, the task of protecting Alice Phil will be handed over to you, Saber. Leave it to me. Also, don't do anything out of line. Otherwise, my sacred sword will go berserk. Saber instantly took out the Excalibur. It invisibly emitted an extraordinary aura. It was full of warnings and threats. This guy is deliberately making things difficult for me. Dustless glared at Alice Phil bitterly. He nodded at Saber and left. Chapter 1703. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Alice Phil persuaded Wu Qin for nearly half an hour. Wu Qin was enlightened and reluctantly agreed to Alice Phil's ridiculous request. In Alice Phil's words, "You're a dead spirit. Why do you care so much?" Creak. Dustless pushed open the door gently. He thought that Rin and Akui Tosaka were already asleep, but the chandelier in the bedroom and living room were still on. Are they asleep? Why are the lights still on? Dustless shook his head when he realized that there was no movement in the bedroom. He didn't want to disturb the mother and daughter. He sat on the sofa and rested for a while. Then he turned on the TV out of boredom. He turned the volume to the lowest and found a few bags of snacks to pass the time. Dustless accepted Alice Phil's suggestion to protect Rin and Akui Tosaka for the time being. He had to stay close to them. Jintong Yayin would definitely ask for the mother and daughter back. You pervert, you came back without saying a word. Could it be that you wanted to take advantage of the fact that we were asleep to ambush me and my mother? Pervert. Dustless was stunned when he heard the angry voice. He looked over and saw that it was Rin Tosaka. She snatched Dustless's potato chips and stuffed them into her mouth. Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say that. Dustless warned her sternly. He suddenly realized that this girl was too arrogant. Isn't that the truth? None of you heroic spirits are good people. Rin Tosaka crossed her arms and said proudly, you can trample on other people's lives just to satisfy your selfish desires. Even if Yen Fengili didn't kill my father, the rest of you would. It's just a matter of order. You're quite open-minded. That's what you mean. Dustless didn't comment. Even if Yen Fengili didn't kill Toshimi Nagasaka in the end, with Kamiya Kissy's personality, he would still order Saber to kill Toshimi Nagasaka. Like Toshimi Nagasaka said, it was just a matter of who came first. But no matter what, my duty now is to protect you and your mother. You can doubt me or hate me. This is already set in stone. Just accept it. Dustless handed Rin and Osaka a bag of snacks and continued to watch the boring soap opera. You? Rin Enbin frowned. Just as he was about to scold Dustless, Dustless's voice rang out. Instead of scolding me, why don't you console your mother? But she's already asleep, so she can only vent all her anger on you heroic spirits. If it weren't for this disgusting war, father wouldn't have left us. Rin and Osaka's eyes were red, and he looked like he was about to cry. Idiot. Seeing this, Wu Che scratched Rin Enbin's nose and reminded him, a child will always be a child. How can you understand the world of adults? If you were the mother of a child, would you cry in front of the child? This will only hurt the child even more. Oh, that's true. Rin and Osaka was stunned when he heard this. He quickly wiped his tears and ran into the room. A brat will always be a brat. His thoughts are indeed too simple. Dustless shook his head as he watched Rin leave. Swish, swish. Time decelerated. Under the black night sky, a pitch-black monster nimbly shuttled back and forth. He wore black armor, and his mask was embellished with a scarlet glow. He looked extremely terrifying and sinister. Ao. Especially from his mouth, there were bursts of hissing sounds that made one's heart tremble. His entire body was emitting an unknown black color of disgust. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Grim Reaper. Moreover, he was holding a sharp weapon that emitted cold light in all directions. Bang bang bang. A violent sound rang out. Suddenly, the black shadow smashed through the tempered glass and landed in the brightly lit living room. He then skimmed towards the bedroom with great familiarity. At this moment, an extremely dissatisfied voice rang out. Berserker. That fellow, the Hero King, calling you a mad dog isn't wrong. You sure are a vulgar creature that doesn't know any manners. Even the most ancient king, Gilgamesh, would not ignore my existence when he sees me. Yet you treat me like air. I'm really sorry, Berserker. If you don't leave on your own accord, then I'll force you to leave. You might even lose your life. Dustless, who was lying on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes. They were also scarlet eyes. In his eye sockets, 3 mysterious tomos slowly rotated, emitting an ominous glow. Compared to the ferocious berserker, the current dustless gave off a more terrifying feeling. The former was more like an enraged lion, while the latter gave off the feeling of a cold executioner. Why is this guy here as well? Personal protection? Damn it. Among all the heroic spirits, this 8th heroic spirit is the most difficult to deal with. His strength is ridiculously strong. In the dark forest at the border of the castle, a figure was gasping for breath and wailing in pain. His face was twitching, and under his skin, it was as if there were countless insects scurrying around aimlessly. It was extremely disgusting. This person was Mamatsuki Yeien. When he found out that Akui Tasaka and Rin Tasaka had been taken to the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he rushed over without stopping. His intention was just as Alice Phil had guessed, to save the mother and son who had been through a lot. However, to his surprise, he never expected Dustless to be the personal protection. Boom boom boom. An explosion suddenly sounded. The invading berserker was kicked out by Dustless the same way he had invaded. Chapter 1704. Seeing Berserker's figure flying out, Jiantong Yeien was stunned for a moment before he cursed. Berserker is a useless piece of trash. He's good at causing trouble for me, but when he's fighting with the enemy he can only fight with someone like Archer. Trash. Jiantong Yeien complained loudly in disgust as if Berserker was a nobody that was not worth mentioning. The actual result was not like that. Among all the heroic spirits, Berserker's statistics were considered top-notch. The fact that he could fight with Gold Flash was proof of his strength. Now he was being tortured by Dustless because his opponent was too monstrous. Lightspeed kick. A laser beam fell on Berserker's body, and his body immediately flew out uncontrollably. Boom boom boom. On the surface it looked like a light kick, but the real power was terrifying. The heavy armor on Berserker's abdomen collapsed due to the direct attack of the lightspeed kick. Ka ka ka. A large number of pieces of the armor were peeling off. Ka ka ka. The void suddenly cracked, and from the mysterious unknown space, an ancient dark red katana swept out. The blade was red and simple, and just by looking at it, one could feel that it was very hot and fatal, as if he could be burned alive at any time. It was the super soul slasher that could destroy the world, Ryujin Jaka. Berserker, you can still hold on for so long. It's worthy of praise. This is really a miracle. Dustless smacked his lips and nodded with a smile. You can still hold on after taking a light speed kick. Although I don't know how strong your combat power is, I can be sure that your ability to take a beating is definitely second to none. Oh. Woo woo woo. In the dark, Berserker seemed to have heard Dustless's ridicule clearly. Inside his helmet, there was a roar that sounded like a human. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Then he turned into a gust of black wind and pounced straight at Dustless. Boom boom boom. The two immediately engaged in close combat, and bright sparks kept flickering. This is a good chance. Now that the 8th heroic spirit is being held back by Berserker, I can go find Kuei Helen and take advantage of this rare opportunity to rescue Kuei Helen and her daughter. Seeing this, Jiantong Yeien was overjoyed. Looking at Berserker, who was fighting Dustless, he sighed in his heart. This heroic spirit, who always liked to attract hatred, had done its job this time. While the two were fighting, Tong Yeien dragged his exhausted body and hurriedly slipped to Kuei and Ling's room. It was extremely difficult for him to walk, and he even fell down several times along the way. There was nothing he could do about it. All his energy had been sucked away by the worms wandering in his body. Now he was just a shell that could control oil. Phew. Thank goodness Berserker is here. Otherwise, with the existence of the 8th heroic spirit, I would never be able to reach this door. 10 minutes later, Jiantong Yeien finally came to Dustless's room and found Ling and Kuei's room. I'm relieved to be praised by you, but is it really okay for you to ignore me like this? Jiantong Yeien was shocked by the sudden voice. He turned his head and saw Wu Qin, who looked lazy. He was sitting on the sofa eating potato chips and drinking Coke. He looked very leisurely and comfortable. Impossible, you should be fighting Berserker. Why are you here now? Staring at Dustless, who was fighting Berserker not far away, Tong Yeien glanced at Dustless, who was eating chips. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he was not seeing things. He was shocked to find that there were 2 Dustless in front of him. Idiot, the one fighting Berserker is just my shadow clone. Dustless glanced at the shocked Tong Yeien and showed a look of disdain. Berserker would have a hard time dealing with my doppelganger, let alone my real body. I purposely suppressed the strength of my doppelganger so that Berserker could stall it. My main purpose was to lure you out. As I expected, you really fell for it. How pathetic. Tong Yiyin was furious when he heard Wu Chen's words. He stared at Wu Chen's mocking face. He felt that his dignity and IQ had been trampled on by this abominable guy. A mere heroic spirit dares to trick me? Eat him up. In his anger, Tong Yiyin suddenly waved his big hand. His skin suddenly burst open and countless larvae broke out from his skin. There were dozens or even hundreds of larvae that came to bite Wu Chen. The buzzing sound was unbearable. Being stared at by countless man-eating insects, no one could laugh it off. You're overestimating yourself. Dustless snorted and rolled his eyes. His pupils emitted a ferocious aura. At the same time, a strong wave of Ryatsu erupted from his body. Puchi, puchi, puchi. All kinds of disgusting insects wandering in the space collapsed in an instant and turned into blood. The disgusting smell was as unbearable as the smell on Tong Yin's body. Stupid thing, Tong Yin. Have your intelligence been eaten by insects? You want to use such a rubbish trick to deal with a heroic spirit? Do you think I'm a small character like Tashimi Nagasaka? Chapter 1705. Hearing Dustless's mocking words, Jiotong Yin was enraged. After all, the so-called heroic spirits were just tools used by the masters. No matter how strong they were still just tools. Just like Lancer and Kenneth in the original novel. Lancer's combat power was amazing and he even injured Saber. However, as the master, Kenneth ordered Lancer to commit suicide. Lancer couldn't escape his tragic fate and was killed by his own gun in the end. Damn you, you're just a heroic spirit. How dare you be so arrogant when you're already dead? Suddenly, Jiotong Yin realized that Akui and Rin were still in the castle. Jiotong Yin, who was in despair, suddenly regained his strength. The mother and daughter were his spiritual sustenance. Therefore, Jiotong Yin's little universe exploded again. Crack, crack, crack. Jiotong Yin's skin exploded again, and the insects that were hidden deep inside his body flew out again. These insects were abnormally fat. It was obvious that Jiotong Yin's body was a feast for them. Disgusting things. Dustless's face turned even colder. He quickly formed a hand seal and a huge fireball flew out. Fire release, great fireball technique. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the insects that were flying towards Jiotong Yin turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. Puchi. Tong Yin was forced to use his strength again and again. In the end, he fell against the wall. His throat rolled a few times and then he spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. There were also a few insects coming out of his mouth. How rude of you to dirty someone's room with such disgusting things. Especially when there are two ladies living here. Didn't your father, Jiotong Yin, teach you manners? Leaning on the sofa, Dustless lazily stared at Jiotong Yin. He also threw the potato chips aside. Even though the tempered glass was broken and the whole room was very cool, the disgusting smell still lingered in the room. Dustless also lost his appetite. Do you really want Akui and Rin to live in peace forever? Dustless glanced at Jiotong Yin and stared at his crazy face. His voice then sank. Or is it just your rationality that's causing trouble? Do you simply want to possess the mother and daughter? Bullshit. Hearing this, Jiotong Yin flew into a rage and roared, I regard Ling and Kuei as my family. How could I do such a thing? Don't slander me. I participated in this Holy Grail war because I don't want them to continue following that scumbag Tashimi. Is that so? Then I'll take back what I said earlier. By the way, I'd like to apologize. In other words, your only wish is for Kuei and Ling to live on without any worries, right? Dustless asked with a smile. He looked harmless, but deep in his eyes, there was a scheming light. Of course. For this goal, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I won't hesitate. Jiotong Yin, who was physically exhausted, finally knelt on the ground. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with determination. Wow, it's rare to see such a great person like you. I can't help but admire you. Dustless continued to smile, and then he instigated, however, even if I give the mother and daughter to you, what kind of protection can you give them? After you die, where can they go? Do you still need to say that? Of course, it's the Jiotong family. The two of them are going to live there for the rest of their lives, living a carefree and stable life like Sakura. Jiotong Yin answered without hesitation. Then here comes the problem. I don't need to say it. You know what kind of person Jiotong Yin is? For the Holy Grail, that guy is crazy. And Ling is a genius with an extremely high magical talent. Do you think Jiotong Yin will overturn her? Jiotong Yin, you are pushing the mother and daughter into the fire pit. Dustless's voice seemed to contain magic, making Jiantong Yan roll his eyes and fall silent. What do you want to say? Staring at Dustless, Jiantong Yan keenly realized that Dustless's words had other meanings. But it was undeniable that what he said made sense. With Jiantong Yan's personality, he would never let Ling and Kuei go. It was equivalent to pushing the mother and daughter into a merciless sea of fire. I can give the mother and daughter to you, but the premise is, you have to kill your biological father, Jiantong Yan. That guy won't let Ling and Kuei go easily. Unless you kill that old man, I can only give you Kuei and Ling's protection. Dustless said sincerely. Kill him? Jiantong Yan was touched when he heard that. In his mind, a terrible old man at the end of his life appeared. His hoarse laughter lingered in his heart for a long time, forming a shadow pattern that was difficult to get rid of. Yes, after you die, that old man won't die. After this Holy Grail, there will be the next Holy Grail war. Maybe that old man will use some evil means. Enough, I agree to your conditions. A raging light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Jiantong Yan finally gritted his teeth and agreed to Dustless's conditions. At the same time he roared, I will go back and kill that old man Jiantong Yan now. I hope you will abide by the agreement when the time comes. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiantong Yan dragged his tired body and left. Before he left, he did not forget to glance at the room where Ling and Kuei were sleeping soundly. A layer of transparent enchantment was clearly visible. Even though it was as thin as a cicada's wing, even though it was close at hand, it was still at the end of the world for Jiantong Yan. No wonder you were used. You are so naive. Even if you kill that old man, I won't give the mother and daughter to you. Jiantong Yan, just like you said before, after all, I am just a sandvart. The decision is in Alice Phil's hands. With a devilish smile, Dustless finally closed his eyes. Chapter 1706. Jiantong Family. Jiantong Yan returned to his bedroom in a daze. He pushed the door open and planned to lie down on the bed to rest for a while. Unexpectedly, a mysterious figure hit him with a stick. Bang! A heavy stick hit him and Jiantong Yan was instantly smashed to the ground. A huge red mark appeared on his forehead where he was hit. Jiantong Yan turned his head and looked at him fiercely. Jiantong Xinyan, be careful. Be careful. I will kill you. Trash like you? Yan, since when did you like to boast so shamelessly? After being a hero spirit for a while, you still have confidence. Jiantong Xinyan walked out of the darkness with a walking stick. His eyes were shining like a ghost. It was creepy. His evil and bright eyes looked like a smart and cunning demon. Jiantong Xinyan, let Sakura go immediately. Changing the topic, Tong Yan used all of his strength to turn around and announce in an extremely cold tone, you better know your place before I make a decision. Decision? What do you want to decide? Yan, I don't understand where your confidence comes from. Just based on your current half-dead state? You better know your place and help me get the Holy Grail. In that case, I can let Sakura go. If you fail, I can only apologize. Jiantong Xinyan sat on the sofa calmly and looked at Jiantong Yan, who was sweating profusely. He sneered and said, it is impossible for you to get the Holy Grail in your current state. In this case, Sakura can't give up. Old man, you still haven't given up on Sakura? Jiantong Yan glared at him. His face was cold. Are you going to break the agreement? Agreement? Ridiculous. If you really remember the agreement, you should remember to help me get the Holy Grail. If you fail, the agreement will be invalid. Jiantong Xinyan turned his face shamelessly. You bastard, how dare you? Jiantong Yan clenched his fists when he heard that. The veins on his forehead bulged. The insects that had disappeared were running around in his skin again. Do you want to be rough with me? With your level? Before we fight, I have to warn you that if you use your heroic spirit rashly, you'll definitely die. Jiantong Xinyan kindly reminded him that he had not obtained the Holy Grail yet. Naturally, he did not want Jiantong Yan to die just like that. I'll drag you down with me, berserker. But Tong Yan didn't care. He shouted, and a black skeleton knight appeared in front of him. He said coldly, that guy is right. As long as I get rid of you, everything will be over. That guy. Tong Xinyan was stunned when he heard this. He was secretly annoyed. A rare flame swept through his rotten heart. Someone actually taught his son to kill his father. It was extremely ironic. Ow 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 ow. Berserker let out his signature low growl and rushed to Xinyan Jiantong without hesitation. The big sword in his right hand was the first to cut a cold light into the void. Puchi. Tong Xinyan's body was cut open by Berserker mercilessly. However, there was no blood flowing out as expected. After the old man was cut, His body turned into a large number of flying insects and scattered in all directions. "Humph, old man, you run fast," Tong Yayan snorted angrily. He dragged his exhausted body and ran around like a headless fly, looking for traces of Xiaoying. "Damn it, which bastard dares to trick my son to kill me? If I find out, I'll definitely let him know the pain of being bitten by thousands of insects." In the gloomy underground warehouse, there were insects everywhere. There were so many of them that they almost covered the entire ground. "Tsk, old man, do you hate me that much?" A sloppy voice suddenly sounded. Tong Zongyan was shocked. He suddenly turned his head, and an unexpected figure was fixed in his eyes. The short black hair was messy, but there was a trace of elegance in it. Those dark eyes were eternal and unforgettable. Especially the smile on the corner of his mouth, it made Tong Zongyan even more furious. It was as if he was looking at a clown. It made his face gloomy. "The eighth heroic spirit? Are you the one who instigated Yayan to kill me?" Glaring at Dustless, Tong Zongyan said hoarsely, "That idiot was deceived by an outsider. His IQ is even lower than Xiao Ying's. Useless trash. Ayaya, if Yayan finds out that you're scolding your son like this, he'll be very sad. However, there's one thing I agree with. He can't even kill a terminally ill old man. That guy is really not suitable to be a master. He's indeed useless." Dustless agreed with Tong Zongyan's opinion. "So you're going to personally lead the army to kill me?" Tong Zongyan's eyes were cold. He said, "It's not that easy to kill me. After all, whoosh whoosh whoosh." Before the old man finished speaking, Dustless turned into a ray of light and appeared in front of him. Then the scorching heaven sword of clouds slashed down. Puchi. The golden light penetrated Tong Zongyan's body. From his forehead to his lower body, he was cut open by Dustless. His eyes were staring straight at the indifferent face of Dustless. It seemed that he was unwilling to die. "Old man, you can rest in peace." Glancing faintly at Tong Zongyan, this guy's body immediately burned automatically. Amaterasu. The black fire engulfed Tong Zongyan's whole body and annihilated him in an instant. Finally, all the insects in the warehouse were burned by Dustless. "I still have to take Xiaoying away." Shaking his head in distress, his observation haki spread out, and Dustless began to look for Sakura's traces. This is what Kuei and Osaka begged. "Anyway, I'm bored, so I might as well help her." Dustless suddenly felt Tong Zongyan's house because he suddenly thought of a big problem. He didn't have time to ask before letting Tong Zongyan leave. Chapter 1707. In the dark courtyard, the path led to a secluded place. Under the moonlight, the lights were blurry. Sakura. Seeing the filthy light, Jiantong Yayan was overjoyed. He dragged his body and rushed over. He could see Sakura's residence in the Jiantong family. "Take Sakura away. Even if I die, I can rest in peace." A satisfied smile appeared on his pale face. To Jiantong Yayan, the most important people in his life were Xiaoying, Kuei Tasaka, and Rin Tasaka. "Tiske, what a touching relationship, Yayan." A mocking tone came from the sky. When he was about to reach Sakura's room, a black shadow blocked his way. It was the last person Jiantong Yayan wanted to see in his life. He was second only to Toshiomi Inaka. "What are you doing in our house, you despicable fellow? You are not welcome here." Jiantong Yayan's face was full of bad luck. His tone was full of disgust and fear. "Not welcome? That's not up to you. I came here to ask you something. I also agreed to Sakura's request to take her away." Looking at Jiantong Yayan's disgusted expression, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He did not care. In this world there were many people who hated him and did not like him. But in the end there was only one ending: death. Did Sakura agree? Jiantong Yayan did not refute. He knew that Sakura had always been in Sakura's heart. However, Toshiomi Inaka was too cold. Sakura had no right to speak. Moreover, the magician family was only allowed to have one legal heir. In the end, Sakura was given to the Jiantong family. "What do you think I am planning? Also, I just killed your cheap father, Jiantong Yayan." That old man raised a bunch of worms. "It's disgusting." The fat worms appeared in his mind. Dustless looked disgusted. "Mind your own business. Even if you don't intervene, I will kill that damn old man." Jiantong Yayan did not thank Dustless. Instead, he scolded Dustless. "You won't be able to last long in this state. Before that, I have a question that I want you to answer." After organizing his thoughts, Dustless's mind became active. When he was in the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he had neglected this important issue. "How did you know that Rin Tasaka and Kuei Tasaka are with the Ahrensburg family?" Although the Tong family is very well informed, and I don't think you've been to the Einsbalen family, when you went to the castle just now, you were so familiar with it that you didn't even waste any time. You immediately confirmed that the mother and daughter were in my room. Humph, of course that's what Wei Gongqisi told me. Sitting on the ground tiredly, Jiantong Yan explained, Wei Gongqisi, that despicable fellow, hopes to use Kuei and Ling as the price in exchange for our cooperation to eliminate Yan Fengqili and his archer. No wonder you're so familiar with that castle. Dustless suddenly understood. No matter how despicable Wei Gongqisi was, he didn't care. A person who was twisted by so-called justice would do anything crazy. Is that so? Then I have something important to tell you. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into a treacherous arc as he said, Wei Gongqisi, that fellow. Previously he still hoped to kill Kuei He Ling. Letting him live is definitely a big problem. Why don't you go and kill that fellow? Did I hear wrongly? You want me to kill Wei Gongqisi? Her eyes were fixed on Dustless. Jiantong Yan felt that her brain wasn't enough. This guy in front of her wanted her to kill Wei Gongqisi. Did he not know what this meant? If things went wrong, Wei Gongqisi's heroic spirit, saber, would disappear. Are you willing to do that? That fellow is a huge threat to Ling and Kuei if he's alive. Dustless increased his tone and said, I don't mind telling you directly. That fellow is actually a pervert and a sex fiend. Is enough. I promise you that I'll kill that fellow Wei Gongqisi. She glanced at Xiao Ying's room with a reluctant expression. But in the end she gritted her teeth and left. Idiot, you think you can kill Wei Gongqisi with just you? That fellow has saber's protection. Furthermore, Wei Gongqisi is an extremely cunning and sinister person. Dustless shook his head and turned to Xiao Ying's room. Creak. The door was gently pushed open by Dustless. Unexpectedly, before Dustless could take the initiative to summon her, a tender and soft fist smashed towards Dustless's face. Bang. Dustless casually raised his hand to block the fist. He frowned slightly. The person who attacked him was Jiantong Yan. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. She was like a walking corpse without any vitality. Grandpa said that other than him, anyone who dares to approach me is a bad person. Xiao Ying muttered vaguely. There was no emotion in her voice. She looked like a zombie. Has she been brainwashed? Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this, and then he remembered the character of Jiantong Yan. He couldn't help but say strangely, that old man wants Xiao Ying to kill Jiantong Yan? As expected, he's an old monster. Bang. Dustless knocked Xiao Ying unconscious with a karate chop. He tried to use the Tensigan to modify Xiao Ying's memory and erase the tragic memory of the Jiantong family from the depths of her soul. I hope that Jiantong Yan can cut off Wei Gongqisi's hand. It's best to make him disabled so that he won't be scheming all day long. Dustless left the Jiantong family with Xiao Ying in his arms and quickly rushed to the castle of the Ahrensburg family. He had a feeling that Jiantong Yan will definitely teach Wei Gongqisi a lesson. Chapter 1708. In the forest near the castle of the Ahrensburg family. You are too reckless. That Dustless is very powerful. I am sure that even Saber would not be able to defeat him, let alone your berserker. In the dark forest, a few figures could be vaguely seen. Jiantong Yan, let's come up with another plan. I will help you sneak Katsuki Tasaka and Rin Tasaka away. As a price you have to help me kill Yan Feng and Chili. Wei Gongqisi looked at the white-haired Jiantong Yan and suddenly felt that something was wrong with him. This guy's eyes. Something is wrong. Looking at Jiantong Yan and Berserker who was beside him, Wei Gongqisi was not worried. He could summon Saber here instantly with a command spell. No, I have changed my plan. He sinisterly approached Wei Gongqisi. Tong Yan's calm eyes instantly turned scarlet. His killing intent was completely revealed and filled with a frightening killing intent. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Suddenly Jiantong Yan attacked relentlessly. His body turned into a gust of wind and pounced on Wei Gongqisi who was still in a daze. Gulp. He grabbed Wei Gongqisi's vital part mercilessly. What are you trying to do? Realizing that his vital part as a man was being grabbed, Wei Gongqisi shivered and looked at Jiantong Yan who was in a frenzy. You bastard pervert, I will take you down with me even if I die. Jiantong Yan's veins were bulging on his right hand as he increased his strength. This guy is so evil. He wants Wei Gongqisi but can't be a man? Dustless was speechless. He thought that Jiantong Yan would just cripple Wei Gongqisi. He did not expect Jiantong Yan to be so ruthless. He wanted to crush Wei Gongqisi's balls. No, I have to help Jiantong Yan once. I like this kind of method. Dustless laughed. He knew that Jianghu had mastered some special magic. He might be able to turn back time. If that was the case, Jianghu's sneak attack would have been wasted. If that's the case, then I'll... Dustless focused on Wei Gongqi's body, purposely avoiding the fatal wound. He mercilessly threw out a pitch-black dagger towards Wei Gongqi's body. Swish, swish. The tip of the pitch-black dagger was shining with a cold light. This is bad. That bastard Jianghu actually has an accomplice. Hearing the sharp sound behind him, Wei Gongqi turned his head and saw a dagger emitting a cold light. Immediately his heart turned cold. Just as he was about to cast a spell to dodge, it was already too late. The merciless cold light pierced through Wei Gongqi's body, causing blood to flow out. Although he wanted to kill this bastard, Dustless had to admit that if he lost Wei Gongqi's saber would immediately collapse and disappear. Puchi. The dagger pierced through his body, leaving a bloody hole. However, because Dustless had purposely avoided the vital parts, Wei Gongqi's injuries weren't too serious. Puchi. At the same time, seeing this rare opportunity, Jianghu also launched a fatal attack. He clenched his fist and crushed Wei Gongqi's balls. From now on, there was one less man in the world and one more eunuch. Gongqi was in so much pain that his head was covered in sweat. His crotch was covered in fresh blood. He fell to the ground and howled in pain. His scarlet eyes stared at Jianghu, wishing that he could turn him into a human stick. This ridiculous bastard. First he scolded him for being a perverted pervert. Now he crippled him. Wei Gongqi's heart was deeply traumatized. I will definitely kill you. Definitely. Wei Gongqi roared in his heart. He swore that he had never wanted to kill someone as much as he did now. It was all because of this bastard in front of him that he could no longer be a man. Wei Gongqi wanted to cry, but no tears came out. This was a great humiliation to him. It was even more humiliating than what he had accumulated in his life. Especially when he was inexplicably crippled by Jianghu. Wei Gongqi felt very wronged by being called a perverted pervert. He didn't do anything worse than a beast, but he had become such a scapegoat. He even had the thought of dying. Well done. Dustless was full of smiles. He had never realized that Jianghu was so cute. Ping ping ping. A series of messy footsteps suddenly sounded. Dustless raised his head and saw an untimely figure. Her panicked face stared at the blood on Wei Gongqi's crotch in disbelief. She then looked at Jianghu, who had a crazed expression and suddenly understood something. Jiuwomi? This fellow really likes to meddle in other people's business. Dustless frowned inwardly. He was rather dissatisfied with her appearance. He then lowered his head and pondered for a moment. In the end he rushed out from the darkness. Not only that, Saber also rushed over. Alice and Phil also did the same. Wei Gongqi's heart-wrenching scream just now was too heart-wrenching. What a pity. I let go of a chance to torture Wei Gongqi. Sigh. Dustless smacked his lips and sighed in pity. Looking at Saber's humiliated appearance, he knew that she would not let Jianghu off so easily. After all, although Wei Gongqi was a rotten person, he was still Saber's master. If Jianghu was allowed to leave, Saber's dignity would also be damaged. Chapter 1709. Qixi, are you all right? Alice Phil came over and asked with concern. Looking at the blood that stained his pants, her face was filled with embarrassment. Alice Phil, don't worry. Qixi has only become a eunuch. It's not a big deal. You know that he has strong willpower. You don't have to comfort him. He will be able to pull through. Dustless's weird voice rang out. Damn it. No matter how strong your willpower is, you can't take this lying down. Why don't you try? Don't just stand there and talk. Qixi, who was already furious, was enraged by Dustless's words. He roared at Dustless, have you caught the despicable person who plotted against me? I must tear him into pieces. The person who plotted against you? Saber revealed an ashamed expression and said apologetically, Master, I'm sorry. The mysterious person who plotted against you. When I rushed over, there was no trace of anyone else. He might have run away. Run away. Useless fellow. Glancing at Saber coldly, Wei Gongqi did not say anything. You? Saber frowned and looked at the furious Wei Gongqi. She was also dissatisfied and said angrily in her heart, if you didn't come out on your own, how could this have happened? Now, other than the problem, you are blaming others? Disgusting. Unknowingly, Saber started to have bad intentions towards Wei Gongqi. She felt that she had to explain to him. The corner of her mouth twitched. Just as she was about to argue with Wei Gongqi, a thumb blocked Saber's lips. Saber, you are just a heroic spirit. No matter how you explain, it will be your fault in the end. Dustless shook his head, indicating to Saber that there was no need to say more. The furious Wei Gongqi would not listen. It was just a waste of time. But this fellow is really despicable. I have told Wei Gongqi time and time again not to act alone. Now that there is a problem, he was even turned into. Glancing at Wei Gongqi, Saber's face turned slightly red, and the words that were about to come out of her mouth turned into a smile. He. Dustless smiled maliciously and cleared his throat. He looked at Wei Gongqi and encouraged him. Qi, isn't it just having your balls crushed? I believe that you can definitely handle it. The voice that filled the entire sky lingered in the void for a long time, as if it wanted to spread throughout the entire world. You bastard! Wei Gongqi's face turned green when he heard this. How could such a thing be said so casually? Staring at Dustless, who was shouting at the top of his lungs, as if he wanted the whole world to know that he was a eunuch, Wei Gongqi wanted to strangle this bastard Dustless to death. Why didn't you use a loudspeaker to publicize it? Saber, get rid of Berserker and his master Xianxia. Remember, don't kill this brat. I want to repay this brat 100-fold and let him understand my pain. His eyes flickered with the light of revenge as Wei Gongqi roared crazily. Because of Xianxia, his self-esteem had suffered a serious blow. If he didn't get rid of him, he wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. I will bring you back for now. Alice Phil glanced at Wei Gongqi with a complicated gaze and carefully supported him. Looking at that crazy face, Alice Phil gradually distanced herself from Wei Gongqi. I'm sorry, Jianghu. Your usefulness ends here. Dustless and Saber blocked in front of Xianxia and thought to themselves, since you will die no matter what, let me give you a dignified death, so that you won't be captured alive by Wei Gongqi and receive the same punishment as him. You bastard! Xianxia's expression froze. Looking at Dustless's calm face, he asked, shameless, don't tell me you want to. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Before Xianxia could finish his words, a ray of light suddenly attacked. Dustless's broad hand directly grabbed Xianxia's head. Woo woo woo, woo woo woo. Xianxia's mouth was also blocked by Dustless, making it difficult for him to speak. Kill you, I must kill you. How dare you betray me? Xianxia roared crazily in his heart. His scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent. He didn't expect Dustless to be so dustless. He had clearly said that he would take care of Wei Gongqi, this shameless bastard. Who would have thought that this bastard would actually betray him now? Putting aside the previous agreement with his current attitude, he even wanted to kill Xianxia to silence him. He didn't want him to tell the truth. Your eyes are really scary. In fact, you don't have to hate me so much. Dustless leaned close to Xianxia's ear and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I think you should thank me, your savior. I will take care of Kuei Ling and Sakura in the future. Farewell, Xianxia. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless's strength exploded. He also increased the strength of his face that was grabbing Xianxia's head. Ka ka ka. One could hear the sound of bones breaking. That pair of big hands crushed the skin on Xianxia's face. Blood kept flowing. No, it was too much to say that it was blood. The skin on his cheeks burst. Other than blood, there was also a large number of fat worms flowing out. Bastard, I can't let this guy go so easily. Xianxia was furious. He clenched his fists and roared in his heart, Berserker, tear this guy into pieces. Tear him into pieces. Ow ow ow. Receiving Xianxia's order, Berserker roared towards the sky and attacked. Chapter 17:10. Berserker's strength was actually not bad. Among the heroic spirits, his stats were considered outstanding. However, he was not very lucky this time. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Berserker attacked Dustless with his sword. The sharp edge of the sword slashed down horizontally, carrying the anger of Jianghu. It looked like he was going to cut Dustless in half. Clang clang. A dull roar spread out and a spark appeared in an instant. Berserker's fatal attack was also blocked. A delicate and seemingly weak figure stepped forward without hesitation. At the critical moment, Saber's Excalibur blocked the dangerous cold light. Ah, what a scary heroic spirit. Dustless said in a frivolous tone, but his face was expressionless. Leave this guy to me. Berserker gives me a feeling of déjà vu. Saber stared at the black-armored swordsman in front of her cautiously and suspiciously. She actually had some impression of his seemingly messy swordsmanship. Do whatever you want. Just don't let this guy run away. Dustless gave Saber a reassuring look, and his teasing gaze fell on Jiantong Yan again. Clang 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 clang. Under the night sky, two agile and vigorous figures fought with all their strength. Every time their swords collided, there would be dazzling sparks. King Arthur, Berserker, always let out a vague and hoarse roar from his throat. It was as low and terrifying as a beast. What a troublesome guy. Saber forced Berserker back with both hands. Every time she slashed, she used all her strength. The person who was in the way is gone. Dustless saw this and sighed heavily. He immediately looked up and stared at the angry Jiantong Yan. He smiled unscrupulously. Don't show such an angry expression. If you don't control your emotions, the worms in your body will consume you faster. I will be very sad if you die. After all, we are allies, Yan. Humph, put away that hypocritical smile of yours. If you were betrayed and abandoned like trash after being used by others, how would you feel? Jiantong Yan asked. You are such a cunning person. I will not let you go even if I become a ghost. Really? Then I'll make sure you can't even be a ghost. Dustless snorted indifferently. Then he sneered and said, If I crush your body and soul, I'll see how you're going to take revenge on me. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. Tong Yan clenched his teeth when he heard Yi Chen's words. The skin all over his body burst open. Hundreds and thousands of fat teeth opened up and bit towards Yi Chen. A deathbed struggle. When Dustless saw this, he glanced at the group of engraved worms and rolled his eyes. The fire that was not there started burning without any sign. Tenso. In the blink of an eye, the fire annihilated all the insects. Not even the residue was left. They evaporated into thin air. Not only that, under the control of Dustless, the black ominous fire spread to the head of Jiantong Yan. It hurts. What kind of will-o'-the-wisp is this? It couldn't be extinguished. *it. Jiantong Yan screamed in pain and fear. He fell to the ground and rolled violently. He tried to put out the fire on his body, but the reality was too cruel. Not only did the fire show no sign of extinguishing, but as time went by, it gradually became bigger and bigger. In the end, it swallowed him whole in an instant. This fire is called Tenso. You want to extinguish it? How stupid you are. Didn't I just say that I'm going to burn your soul? Dustless said in a cold tone. He did not have a good impression of Jiantong Yan. Jiantong Yan said that he liked Isaka Kue, but the person who killed Isaka Kue was actually this guy. He was a real hypocrite. Your soul has been burned by Tenso. I'll see how you won't let me go even if you become a ghost. Looking at Jiantong Yan, who was screaming in pain, Dustless had a pleasant expression on his face. Jiantong Yan's screams, which sounded like he wanted to die, sounded very funny to Dustless. After about a minute, Jiantong Yan's screams gradually died down. The night sky returned to its peaceful state. Looking up at the sky, the stars in the galaxy were shining brightly. The night sky was beautiful. There shouldn't be any problems over there, right? As far as his eyes could see, in the dark forest, there were two shadows fighting against each other. Every move and every collision would cost the lives of both parties. Forget it. I'm bored anyway. Let's go take a look. Dustless was humming a tune. His skinny body walked past Jiantong Yan, who was now a mummy. He walked straight to the place where Spare and Berserker were fighting. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. With a gentle breeze, Jiantong Yan's body was completely eroded. He turned into black powder and disappeared with the wind. His name was completely erased from the world. Berserker has quite a lot of mana stored in his body. Even though Jiantong Yan, the master, is dead, this guy can still continue to fight with Saber. However, it's only a matter of time before he loses. Even though the master was dead, Sarvant would not disappear in a short period of time. As long as he had enough mana in his body, it would not be a problem for him to last for a few days. Once his magic power was exhausted, Sarvant would vanish and evaporate. Chapter 17:11. Clang, clang, clang. Even though Master was dead, Berserker was still as ferocious as ever. He and Saber were engaged in a fierce battle. Berserker seemed to have realized that he would soon leave this world. Not only did he not weaken his attacks, but he also kept the remaining magic power in his body and unleashed it all. Instead, he became more and more courageous as he fought. He used up all of his magic power. His obsession with Saber was so deep that it felt like he wanted to drag her down with him. With Saber's arrogant personality, even if I helped her once, she would not appreciate it. Instead, she would blame me for being a busybody. Are all the ancient people so stubborn? What a troublesome problem, girl. Staring at Saber with a headache, Dustless sighed. For Saber, the so-called dignity of a knight should not be trampled on. It was more important than anything else. Even if she died, she would not care. But, looking at Berserker's heavy armor, Dustless warned, Saber, put some distance between you and that guy for now. Dustless, you, Saber frowned. She felt an unknown power flowing in Dustless's body. She angrily stopped him and said, Dustless, even you want to trample on my dignity as a knight like Wei Gong Kisi. However, Dustless was silent. He ignored Saber and stared at Berserker with his cold eyes. Path of destruction, black coffin. Swoosh, swoosh. The black light that filled the sky bombarded Berserker's body. He was immediately pushed back. Berserker's tough armor also had visible cracks. Dustless, you. Seeing such a scene, Saber was not happy. Instead, she was furious. For the first time, she was filled with dissatisfaction and resentment towards Dustless. Saber, if you want to punish him, it's not too late to see the situation. Pointing at Berserker's direction, Dustless said, This guy's true colors are about to be revealed. True face? Saber was stunned when she heard that. She looked at Berserker and saw that the cracks on his armor were getting bigger and bigger until they spread all over his body. This is, Saber's gaze was fixed on Berserker's body. Attacked by the black coffin, the steel armor gradually peeled off. Saber's beautiful eyes suddenly shrank, revealing a familiar face. Lancelot. Why are you Berserker? Saber's mind went blank as she stared at the face. Roar. King Arthur. After Dustless destroyed his impenetrable armor, Berserker's consciousness became much clearer. Although he was still very violent, he was not as crazy and reckless as before. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, Berserker only hesitated for a moment before attacking Saber with his relic. His speed was so fast that even Dustless could only catch a glimpse of a blurry shadow. Seeing that Berserker was about to approach Saber while the latter was still in shock, Dustless had no choice but to interrupt the match and help Saber. 10,000 Celestial Attraction. A strong gravitational force suddenly appeared, and Berserker's body suddenly became sluggish. His body could no longer move forward as Dustless's huge hand ruthlessly sucked him in. Damn you. Interrupting a battle between knights, your crime, is enough for me to behead you 10,000 times. The armor on his body collapsed and disappeared. Berserker's eyes were filled with madness. He was no longer stuttering like before. Instead, he was speaking very fluently. His eyes were clear and bright as if he had found his reason after going berserk, even if it was only for a short moment. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dustless suddenly interrupted him and Berserker was furious. Following the inertia of the gravitational force, his relic was aimed at Dustless's head. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The tip of the sword was extremely tricky, and there was no way to avoid it. It seemed like he could only take the attack head-on. Hee. Seeing Dustless's tragic death, Lancelot Berserker's face showed a gloomy arc. He laughed ferociously like a demon. Clang 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 clang. Sparks flew in the air, and Berserker's right hand that was holding the relic was numb. He thought to himself, could it be that his body is made of diamond? How could it be so hard? Berserker looked at Dustless in confusion, and his jaw almost dropped. Gulp. Berserker's throat rolled as he looked over. His precious artifact was right on top of Wu Chen's forehead. It looked as if his head was about to be chopped off. However, who would have thought that a thumb would be as indestructible as a meteorite, blocking the divine sword that could cut through iron like mud? That's right, it was just a finger. Are you kidding me? This guy is not a god, how could he block my relic with just a finger? Berserker's face turned pale, and when he was about to attack, Dustless's cold and warning voice was heard. Berserker, your opponent is not me, and I am not interfering in the battle between knights. Dustless said and stared at Berserker's crazy eyes. Of course, if you insist on treating me as your enemy, then I will be a qualified enemy and cripple you. Humph, if you did not interrupt my battle, Arthur's head would have been taken by me. How dare you say that you did not interrupt the battle between knights? Ridiculous. Berserker sneered. A battle between knights? How dare you say that? Dustless looked at Berserker with disdain and mocked. You knew that Saber was in a daze, but you attacked her at all costs. Is the battle between knights so dirty? Berserker's face turned red and he shouted angrily, she was distracted and she deserved to be killed. She can't blame anyone else. You are not fit to call yourself a knight. In my eyes you are a treacherous villain. Dustless sneered and he hated Lancelot. This guy used to be one of King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, and Saber trusted him so much that she gave the task of protecting the queen to Lancelot. Then a very melodramatic scene happened. Lancelot and Saber's queen fell in love. It was precisely because Saber had absolute trust in Lancelot that she gave him such an important task. However, who would have thought that Lancelot was so shameless that he seduced the queen at that time? Although Saber forgave Lancelot in the end, in Dustless's eyes, this kind of behavior was unforgivable. He deserved to be cut into pieces 10,000 times. You should be thankful that you have a king like Saber. If it were me, Gilgamesh, or the Conquest King, you would have long been skinned alive. Now you still have the face to blame others. Scum. Chapter 17:12. UB** starred. Berserker's face turned red after being scolded by Dustless. His eyes were filled with uncertainty as he stared at Dustless's face. His surging murderous intent could not be concealed and burst out like a tide. If you want to die, then come at me immediately, trash. Dustless continued to attack unceremoniously. Just looking at this idiot made him feel unlucky. If Dustless were Saber, he would definitely cut this D***MNB* starred into 8 pieces and feed him to the dogs. I'm afraid that I hate people like you the most. Seeing that Dustless was going to continue attacking him, Berserker could not bear it anymore. Finally, he could not continue to be a coward. Otherwise he would be scolded to death by Dustless. Berserker, who could not stand it any longer, charged at Dustless. Dustless snorted when he saw this. When he was about to give Berserker a fatal blow, Saber once again blocked Berserker without giving him any face. This guy is my prey. Saber stood in front of Dustless and said resolutely, Lancelot, I need to deal with him personally to end all the grudges between us. What a stubborn woman. Dustless withdrew his oppressive aura. He also understood that he could not stop her. Saber's stubbornness gave him a headache, and it was not suitable for him to intervene. After all, this was a personal grudge between Saber and Lancelot. Before leaving, Dustless suddenly stopped and looked at Berserker. Then he cautiously said, You'd better be careful. In the castle of the Arensberg family. At this moment, one of the best doctors in Dongmu City was gathered in Wei Gong Kissy's room. After all, Wei Gong Kissy's balls were crushed by Jiantong Yayan. This was definitely explosive news. When will his injuries recover? He still has a lot of work to do. Jiu Mamie saw the doctor coming out of the room and was relieved. Treatment? With all due respect, you should prepare for the funeral of that Mr. Wei Gong Qixi. Jiu Mamie's face was full of expectation. Who would have thought that the doctor would mercilessly give her an answer that would make her collapse? He immediately turned his head and wanted to leave, leaving behind Jiu Mamie, who was possessed. Please wait a moment. Are you saying that you are going to prepare for Qixi's funeral? After a while, Jiu Mamie, who had regained her senses, was greatly shaken. Her mind was in a mess. Wasn't it just crushed, that thing? Even if it was completely cut off, it wouldn't be so exaggerated. Cough, cough, cough. Mr. Doctor, please don't be in a hurry to leave, I still want to ask more questions. Jiu Mamie stared at the doctor and asked awkwardly, It shouldn't be that fatal, right? Cut's life force and willpower are both very strong. Willpower? That kind of tenacious spirit also depended on what kind of illness it was. This patient still has a wound on his abdomen. Although it is not fatal as expected, it has seriously weakened the patient's physical condition. Especially the condition of the gentleman on the bed is special. It has caused serious psychological trauma and obstacles. It will be very difficult for him to recover. I don't know how long he can hold on. If he can't hold on, maybe he will die in a few days. The doctor shook his head and then showed an expression of helplessness. After nagging for a while, he left. Although some diseases could be cured, the psychological trauma was too serious. He can't be saved. Why is Wei Gong Qixi so useless? Did he grow up without doing anything? Wu Qin, who had just rushed back, was also greatly shocked when he heard this. He originally only wanted to give Wei Gong Qixi a blow, but he didn't expect that the blow would go too far, leaving this guy with a serious psychological barrier. It sounded like he would die immediately if things went wrong. It seems that this time, if Wei Gong Qixi dies, then who will provide Saber's magical power? Dustless frowned secretly. Now that Wei Gong Qixi is like this, it is difficult for him to survive, let alone provide Saber's magical power. According to the doctor's meaning just now, if Wei Gong Qixi can get out of the psychological trauma, there will be no problem for him to recover, but if he gives up, it is only a matter of time before he dies. Should I become Saber's master? A thought flashed across Wu Chen's mind as he muttered to himself. Although he was only a heroic spirit now, he was only a fake. I can let Wei Gongqi take the initiative to transplant the command seal to me. Dustless's Sharingan flashed a strange light, and he smiled gloomily. This step is actually very simple. It can be completed with Genjutsu. It is really not a big problem. The key problem is Saber. If she is not willing, Dustless will be useless even if he becomes her master. Saber believes in the knight's path. It is impossible and unrealistic for her to betray Wei Gongqi for no reason. Unless Wei Gongqi does something that Saber can't tolerate, then she can get rid of him. Forget it. Consider yourself lucky for the time being. Help Wei Gongqi live for 2 more days. After careful calculation in his heart, Dustless finally chose to let Wei Gongqi live for a while. He could use would release to slow down Wei Gongqi's illness. Of course, it was impossible to let him recover completely. Dustless only hoped that this guy could live for 2 more days. It would be best if he could hang on for a while. Even if he died, he had to wait until the end of the Holy Grail War. Chapter 1713. In Wei Gongqi's room. Alice Phil sat beside the bed and stared at the haggard man. She didn't know why, but she wasn't as sad as she used to be. The heart-wrenching pain was no longer there. Now all that was left was pure worry. It was similar to the worry between friends. Ever since Dustless and Saber appeared, her relationship with Wei Gongqi gradually went in the opposite direction. It developed further and further until today. Especially because of the relationship between Takumi Enosaka and Rin Enosaka, the two of them had a rare quarrel. Creak. The tightly closed door was gently pushed open. Dustless walked in quietly. "You're here?" Alice Phil's face outlined a forced smile. It looked extremely forced. Her delicate snow-white face was even paler than usual. Her spirit was also very dispirited and weak. "Alice Phil, don't worry. If you're so sad, he wouldn't want to see it." Walking in front of Alice Phil, Dustless patted her shoulder and comforted her gently. "Alice Phil, go out and rest for a while. Leave this to me for the time being." Alice Phil didn't pay attention to him. Instead, she suddenly attacked Dustless. "Alice Phil, you're..." Dustless was dumbfounded. He looked at Alice Phil, who was close to him. A strange fragrance entered his nose along Alice Phil's face. Suddenly he felt that his waist was bound. His chest was also squeezed by her proud cleavage. Looking down, Alice Phil suddenly hugged Dustless. "I'm so scared." After being silent for a while, Alice Phil said softly with tears in her eyes, "Maybe soon I'll leave this world and rush to that unfamiliar world." "That world?" Dustless frowned slightly and asked, "Are you talking about the world after people die?" "Don't worry, you're so beautiful. Even those little ghosts of the King of Hell will be charmed by you. They can't bear to let you die." "Wuxia." Alice Phil suddenly laughed. She threw a charming glance at Dustless and said, "Loquacious. Sometimes I wonder if you're still alive. What you do and what you think are completely different from those hero spirits." "Really? Do you really want him to live that much? That way you two can have a rendezvous like this, right?" An extremely oppressive and gloomy voice that was as indignant as a volcano suddenly sounded. "This is... You're awake?" Dustless and Alice Phil were startled. They looked towards the source of the sound, and to their surprise, it was Wei Gongqi, whose face was filled with black lines. He stared at Dustless and Alice Phil ferociously. Seeing this, Alice Phil was overjoyed. "Desuke, you're awake. I was worried." "You're worried? It's all bullshit." Wei Gongqi's eyes widened. He was so angry that he vomited 3 liters of blood. He glared angrily. He didn't expect that Alice Phil and Dustless would get together right after he fell ill. "Furthermore, it's fine if the two of you are having an affair, but you're even having an affair in my ward. Doing this kind of thing in front of me, is that exciting or fulfilling? Preposterous. How can you bully me like this? Too shameless. The two of you. You only feel a sense of accomplishment when you do this kind of thing in front of me?" I suddenly woke up. "Did I disturb the two of you? May I ask if you need me to continue pretending to be unconscious?" Wei Gongqi stared fiercely at Dustless. His stomach swelled up and it looked like he was about to explode. "Tisk, you're mistaken. The truth is not what you think." Seeing this, Alice Phil hurriedly let go of Dustless. Her face was red as she looked at Wei Gongqi's red cheeks. She couldn't help but feel ashamed deep in her heart. At this moment, Dustless suddenly stood up and didn't give Alice Phil a chance to explain. "Wei Gongqi, don't you know? You're about to die. I'm helping you take care of Alice Phil. You should be thanking me. Especially now that you're just a eunuch." Moreover, you're about to die soon. You can die in peace. Leave Alice, Phil, and your daughter to me. Wuxian said righteously. Moreover, he pulled Alice, Phil into his arms in front of Wei Gongqi. Moreover, he even kissed her delicate thin lips even more fiercely. Puchi. Seeing this scene, Wei Gongqi was momentarily stunned. In the end, he couldn't hold back the fire in his heart. He spat out a mouthful of old blood and fainted. Dustless, what are you talking about? Alice, Phil hurriedly pushed Dustless away. Looking at the unconscious Wei Gongqi, she hurriedly ran out. Moreover, she was extremely anxious as she called for a doctor. Tiske Wei Gongqi, a scum like you is really lucky. Looking at Alice, Phil's disappearing figure, Dustless was rather envious of this guy's luck with women. Men die for those who understand them, women dress up for those who love them. Now that Alice, Phil was so anxious, it meant that although she and Wei Gongqi were estranged, she still hadn't forgotten Wei Gongqi. Forget it, I'll temporarily help you maintain your life for a few days. At least before this Holy Grail war ends, you definitely can't die. Walking in front of the sickbed, Dustless's palm emitted an emerald glow. Using the wood release method, he injected a large amount of life force into Wei Gongqi's body. What a sin, this brat better not die from anger because of me. Looking at the blood-red sheet, Dustless secretly scolded Wei Gongqi in his heart. This brat is too weak. I only took a little liberties with your wife, is there a need to be so sad? Anyway, you have a mistress, Jiu Mamie. With her, you don't have to worry about your future life at all. Chapter 17:14. Dustless was talking to himself. If Wei Gongqi heard it, he would definitely jump up in anger. Those words were just too unpleasant to listen to. However, looking at his current state, he is not qualified to continue being Saber's master. I'm afraid he would not even be as good as me. What a useless piece of trash. After checking the condition of Wei Gongqi's body, Dustless realized that he had gone too far. Wei Gongqi was both mentally and physically exhausted. His mental power was severely overdrawn. How long he could live would depend on his body. In short, I can't let you die now. Dustless threw the complicated emotions out of his mind. He increased the life force of wood release into Wei Gongqi's body and slightly healed his wounds. After a few minutes, the fainted Wei Gongqi opened his eyes again. Dustless, why would you be so kind as to save me? What is your goal? Wei Gongqi turned his head to look at Dustless's face and asked, what is your plan? I don't believe that you are so great. Idiot who doesn't understand human nature, get it straight. This is to save you. When you speak, remember that the person you are talking to is the benefactor who saved your life. Wuxian emphasized the word to remind him. The benefactor who saved my life? Wei Gongqi was choked by those words. His face twitched as he put on a fake smile and said, then, how do you think I should thank you? Give you Alice and Phil? Do I need you to give me that? Dustless sneered and said, after you die, everything will be mine. Your wife and daughter will be mine. Veins popped out on Wei Gongqi's face. He bit his tongue and roared, you this brat don't go too far. After this Holy Grail war ends you will die without a doubt. You don't have to worry about that. After sweeping a glance at Wei Gongqi, Dustless muttered to himself for a moment before revealing his intentions. Wei Gongqi, since you won't be able to hold on for long, why don't we do this? Transfer your command incantation to me and I can help you live for a while. You want my command spell? Wei Gongqi was startled and asked without hesitation, you want to continue fighting as Saber's master? What a joke. Ah. Wei Gongqi let out a disgusting sneer as he rolled around on the bed in an exaggerated manner. You, a servant, actually want to become a master and continue fighting? What a joke. Insensible idiot. Upon seeing this, Dustless's expression turned cold, and a sinister arc flashed in his eyes. The chakra that was channeling into Wei Gongqi's body suddenly stopped, and the chakra materialized, turning into a sharp knife that pierced into Wei Gongqi's skin. Puchi. It hurts, you bastard, how dare you do this to me? Wei Gongqi felt the abnormality in his abdomen, and cold sweat flowed down his forehead due to the pain. Don't get it wrong, I don't want to become Saber's master yet. This is just an early negotiation, and the purpose is to tell you that when you can't hold on any longer, I will become Saber's master. Dustless said with certainty. If a trash like Wei Gongshiro could become master, why couldn't he? It was simply too funny. Furthermore, Wei Gongqi didn't understand Dustless's situation. In reality, he didn't die and he wasn't a true heroic spirit. You're on your own now. Noticing that Wei Gongqixi's body had regained some color, Dustless didn't overdo it. If it wasn't for Saber, it would be better for this eyesore to die. Remember, I don't need to snatch anything from you. After you die, everything will be mine, ha. Dustless let out a laugh that made Wei Gongqixi feel nauseous. His eyes stared at Dustless, who was leaving. If the heavens could feel his wish, Wei Gongqixi was willing to die together with Dustless at all costs. Damn it, I definitely won't allow this to happen. After Dustless left, Wei Gongqixi's eyes flashed, and a ruthless expression flashed across his face. Alice Phil is the vessel on my back. If she can die for me, she should feel honored. Anyway, what awaits her is death. I definitely can't accept her becoming Dustless's mistress, and I definitely can't tolerate Alice Phil betraying me. On the bed, Wei Gongqixi screamed crazily. Alice Phil was the vessel of the Holy Grail, and her ending was death. No matter who obtained the Holy Grail in the end, she would definitely die. In any case, Alice Phil once said that she would die for me. The guilt on his face disappeared in an instant, and Wei Gongqixi revealed a straightforward expression. Until now, he was still dreaming of borrowing the power of the Holy Grail to become the partner of justice. However, little did he know that Wei Gongqixi's crazy mutterings had all fallen into Alice Phil's ears. Alice Phil, who was standing outside the door, pursed her lips. She was flabbergasted, as if she didn't expect Wei Gongqixi to be so heartless. Alice Phil had once said that she was willing to die for Wei Gongqixi, but the taste and essence of everything had changed. Stupid man, like a pig. Where there are people, there will be fighting, and when there is fighting, there will be darkness. When there is darkness, there is only one way to completely eradicate the darkness of this time and become the so-called partner of justice: to exterminate the human race. Glancing at Alice Phil, who was standing in front of Wei Gongqixi's bedroom door with a complicated expression, Dustless couldn't help but feel emotional. When a person's material life was satisfied, there would be spiritual enjoyment, and inexplicable dreams would be born. For example, Wei Gongqixi was like this. When he woke up from his dream, it was already too late. Chapter 17:15. Wei Gongqixi was so heartless. Without a doubt, the one who suffered the most was Alice Phil. While the former was scheming, the latter was definitely sincere. Bang, bang, bang. At the same time, the sound of heavy footsteps could be heard. Dustless looked out of the window and saw Saber's figure. Her blonde hair was slightly messy and covered in sweat. Her expression was also pale and weak. Looks like the victor has been decided. Lowering his head, he saw that Spare was covered in blood. Dustless couldn't find any wounds on him. It was probably all berserkers, and Saber was only slightly exhausted. This is bad, Dustless frowned. If it was in the past, it would have been fine. However, Wei Gongqixi was beaten into a eunuch by Jiantong Yayan. His life was in danger. If it was not for Dustless's help, Wei Gongqixi might not even be able to survive. Now he even had to provide Saber with her mana. We have to end this Holy Grail war as soon as possible. In the battle with Berserker just now, Saber is probably exhausted as well. If this drags on, the situation will be even worse for us. A hint of decisiveness appeared in his eyes. Dustless secretly clenched his fists. If he ended this war in advance, all the problems would be solved. Originally, Dustless wanted to go back to his room to rest. However, he resolutely walked towards Alice Phil, who was in a daze. Alice Phil, I have something to tell you. I plan to go tomorrow. Before Dustless could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Alice Phil's sobbing. How can Wei Gongqixi be so heartless? Alice Phil's tone was filled with endless fatigue and sadness. She used to call him Qixi. Now she was calling him by his name. It was not hard to tell that there was a big problem between the two of them. There's nothing to be shocked about, little brat. Dustless smiled and advised, everyone has their own way of thinking. There's nothing perfect in this world. It's impossible to create a perfect person based on your logic. Creating a perfect partner based on yourself is only limited to fairy tales. However, that bastard Wei Gongqixi is too heartless. Dustless changed the topic and criticized Wei Gongqixi without holding back. After sorting out his thoughts, Dustless continued, Alice Phil, I plan to deal with Iskandar the Conqueror of Ryder tomorrow and try to end this Holy Grail war. If this drags on, it's not good for Sabe's life. No problem, I think so too. With Cutter's current state, it's impossible for him to continue helping Saber. In that case, we can only rely on you, Dustless. Alice Phil looked at Wu Chen with an apologetic look. She lowered her head in shame. There's nothing to apologize for. You, on the other hand? Dustless looked at Alice Phil with a complicated expression. She was the one who got hurt in the end. Just like what Wei Gong Qixi said before, Alice Phil was just a carrier of the Holy Grail. She would die no matter what. I want to end this war as soon as possible. At the same time, a cold voice suddenly came from the room. Lowering his head, he saw Wei Gong Qixi in his pajamas. Even though he tried his best to remain calm, and his cheeks regained some color, deep in his soul, he could still feel the exhaustion of his soul. Is this guy made of iron? He's so confident even though he's been turned into a eunuch. Dustless slandered in his heart. He did not say these words to Wei Gong Qixi. If he did not do it well, this guy would be hit hard again. Tomorrow Dustless will fight with Ryder. As for Saber, she will stay behind to protect me and Alice Phil to prevent Yen Feng Chili and his archer from sneaking up on us. Time flew, and the next morning came in the blink of an eye. When Saber heard that they were going to fight the conqueror King Iskandar, she requested to fight together with Dustless. However, she was rejected by Dustless. The reason made Saber speechless. She could only stare at him. Do you want to interfere with the battle between knights? It was because of such an inexplicable sentence that Saber sensibly stayed in the castle to protect Alice, Phil, and Gong Gong Qixi. Even though Dustless and Iskandar were not knights, it was still an unforgivable act to recklessly intervene in other people's duel. After thinking about it carefully, Saber also acquiesced to Dustless's idea. Alice Phil and Wei Gong Qixi really needed someone to stay behind and watch over them. This place should be enough. The thin figure stood on top of a majestic bridge. Dustless stared at the sea in the distance. This was the place where the first battle between the heroic spirits took place. Boom, boom, boom. Dustless stepped on the huge steel pipe of the bridge. Loud rumbling sounds were heard as the sound gradually spread to the entire city with the help of the sea breeze. This was a form of provocation. It meant, I'm right here. If you don't like it, come at me. At a remote location. The Conqueror King, who was eating with Wilbur Velvet, suddenly raised his head. When he heard the faint sound, he laughed with fighting spirit. Did you hear the horn of battle? Someone is challenging me. Iskandar clenched his fists. His eyes were like torches, shining with a dazzling light. He said loudly, as a king, it's ridiculous to avoid a battle. Idiot, this could also be the sound of some construction site under construction, Wilbur Velvet refuted. There's no construction site near your house. Moreover, the source of this sound is at least a few kilometers away. If some construction site is really under construction, do you think it's possible to travel so far? Wilbur Velvet was silent. There was only one kind of person who could do such a thing, heroic spirits. Chapter 17:16. Ryder, who is the person who issued us a challenge? Is it Archie or Saber? Or is it the 8th heroic spirit? That fellow is the most terrifying. I really don't wish to encounter him. When the 8th heroic spirit was mentioned, Wilbur Velvet's body trembled uncontrollably. He felt a chill down his spine and could not help but shiver. Ah! To me it doesn't matter who it is. The Conquest King, who was riding the divine might wheel, let out a hearty laugh. He was fearless as he stared at the faint silhouettes on the bridge in the distance. His rough face was replaced by excitement. Don't you find it delightful to have a battle with heroic spirits from different eras? The Conquest King's face was filled with excitement as though he had been injected with chicken blood. He nearly jumped up and down. You, forget it. I knew that this would be the outcome. In any case, it's up to you. Wilbur Velvet sighed and ignored the Conquest King. There was no need to talk nonsense with a battle maniac. To be honest, be it Archer, Saber, or the 8th heroic spirit, I don't have enough chances of victory. Especially the unfathomable 8th heroic spirit that you mentioned. That fellow's noble artifact is similar to Archer's, but its might and proficiency seems to be even more powerful than Archer's. The Conquest King was vexed. This was the first time he heard that a noble artifact could be used by two people. That fellow must have been sent by the heavens to deliberately go against us. Wilbur Velvet grumbled in frustration. He was filled with complaints about Dustless. This Holy Grail war was ridiculously strange. There had never been an 8th Sarvant. Furthermore, the most unacceptable thing was that the sudden appearance of an 8th heroic spirit could be ignored. Furthermore, it was unbelievably strong. In a 1v1 situation, it was almost invincible. Didn't Toshiomi Inaka say that he wanted to join forces with us? Why didn't you agree to it in the past? Now that that fellow is dead, there's no one to join forces with. Wilbur Velvet's complaints were all directed at the Conquest King. Bang! However, the Conquest King gave him a slap and snapped, "Fool! There can only be one final victor. Sooner or later there will be a time when we part ways." "Is he here?" The Conquest King sure made an arrogant entrance. "However, it's not bad to prepare a funeral for you. After all, we were acquaintances." Looking up at the sky, Dustless had an unfathomable smile on his face. Looking up, one could see lightning flashing and thunder rumbling in the void. Dark clouds were rolling, and the cries of beasts resounded through the starry sky like heavenly thunder, spreading to the ends of the world. A majestic monarch descended like the ruler of the world. The activity coming out of the brain is really scary. Wherever the Conquest King's divine might wheel passed, lightning would streak across. Thick bolts of lightning boomed without restraint, as though they had the power to destroy the world. But then the smile on Dustless's face disappeared and he muttered to himself, "Although flowers are pragmatic and the ending is a bit monotonous, I can still find some good fun. So it's you, the 8th heroic spirit?" Boom, boom, boom. The Conquest King's divine might wheel landed on the ground, producing a loud rumble. It carved out a charred trench on the ground and stopped not far in front of Dustless. "Give it your all, Conquest 5. This will be the final battle. Don't disappoint me with your performance." Dustless's hand flashed, and a golden greatsword instantly took shape. "Ah, I couldn't ask for more." The Conquest King laughed out loud when he saw this. He glanced at Web Velvet, indicating for him to get off the carriage and leave. Web Velvet looked at the Conquest King worriedly. After hesitating for a moment, he tactfully left the divine might wheel. After all, he was just a burden. "You won't attack this fellow, right?" The Conquest King asked in a deep voice as he pointed at Web Velvet. "Don't compare me to someone like Wei Gong Qixi, a master who kills his enemies. It's extremely comical. Only someone like Wei Gong Qixi who fears his enemies would be so despicable." Dustless snorted coldly in disdain. His words were filled with endless mockery and disdain. He scoffed at Wei Gong Qixi's methods. Assassinating the opponent's master and forcing Sarvant to surrender was Wei Gong Qixi's specialty. For example, in the original work, Lancer was tricked to death by Wei Gong Qixi. His master was captured, and in the end, Lancer was ordered to commit suicide. Before the battle begins, forgive me for speaking bluntly. I have one last question to ask you. If you remain silent, this king will not be able to die in peace." The Conquest King lowered his gaze and stared at Dustless. He did not dare underestimate that thin body of his. He asked in a deep voice, "You seem to have more noble artifacts than Archer. That lightsaber in your hand should be at least A+ grade. My last question is, who are you?" The Conquest King could not hold back his curiosity and asked with anticipation. It was fine to lose, but if he died without knowing who killed him, it would be too tragic. This fellow doesn't know the meaning of curiosity killing the cat. Suddenly recalling a famous saying from his previous life, Dustless's gaze turned complicated. His thoughts turned in reverse. He had lived for hundreds of years, and the number of titles he had been given was too many. Conquest King is just a name. Is there a need to be so persistent? Even if you know it's meaningless. Dustless muttered. It would be great if everyone could part on good terms. Asking for a name after death, how boring. Chapter 1717. Meaningless? No. There's great significance. This question not only perplexed the Conquest King, but also left Sarvant and Master perplexed. Dustless's method of existence was too strange and evil. It was beyond everyone's understanding. Dustless clearly did not have any mana at his disposal, but his strength was so astounding that it made everyone's eyes pop. There were even some bored people who spent a lot of time rummaging through all the historical myths, but still could not find a hero that matched Dustless. For example, Yin Feng Kaylee and Tashimi had done so, but they could not find a powerful hero that matched Dustless's identity. Who exactly is this guy? Perhaps only the heavens know. Writer's Conquest King Iskandar was not the only one who was puzzled. In fact, his master, Wilbur Velvet, was also deeply perplexed. Looking at all the myths in the world, there seemed to be no one with abilities comparable to Dustless. There was only Gilgamesh. Although he and Dustless could use the ability of the Gate of Babylon, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the so-called Gate of Babylon was actually just one of Dustless's many abilities. Is that so? Are you sure you want to know about my past? He glanced at Iskandar, the Conqueror King, in astonishment. His dustless and deep eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. He stared at the Conqueror King for a moment before he said calmly, Conqueror King, have you heard of the story of Pandora's box? Pandora's box? The Conquest King was stunned when he heard that. He immediately looked at Dustless in astonishment and frowned. Are you trying to say that you are also a monster in Pandora's box? You can understand it that way. Dustless nodded and immediately smiled. If you know about my long life, I'm worried that your combat power will decrease. In the past, when I fought with a god, she was in such a situation. Those who know about my past are unable to face me with their full strength. This guy, Wilbur Velvet's brows furrowed deeply when he heard that. A clear Chuan character could not be concealed. This guy is as unfathomable as a god. Ah. Is your past enough to scare others away? Interesting. The Conquest King laughed heartily when he heard this. Following that, he stared at Dustless and said, "That's what makes it interesting. I wish to know of your past even more. It's not just me. Everyone wishes to know of your past. The same goes for Archer. I've already vaguely guessed his identity, the ancient king of Uruk, Gilgamesh, known as the Hero King." What an untactful man. Dustless sighed helplessly and said casually, "I don't have a fixed title. In the past, I was revered as a god and feared as a devil. I destroyed countless worlds, killed countless gods, and created many worlds. If you don't mind, you can be my opponent, a moody and boring god." In the end, Dustless came to such a conclusion. God. I've long been aware of that. The Conquest King was not surprised when he heard that. Instead, the doubts in his heart were relieved. Just as he had said, when facing Dustless, the Conquest King had the resolve and determination to challenge a god. In fact, it was not just the Conquest King. The heroic spirits that had fought with Dustless all treated him as a super godlike monster. That's for the best. Since you aren't attacking, I'll just bully the weak. Dustless revealed a stern gaze. Seeing the Conquest King remain motionless as though he was preparing for something, Dustless took the initiative to transform into a flash of light and pounced at the Conquest King. In fact, the identity of a god was nothing much. For example, the Hero King of Archer, Gilgamesh, had 2/3 of a divinity. He was a heaven-defying existence that was half human and half god. However, compared to Dustless, who had dominated countless eras, Gilgamesh was far inferior. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In an instant he appeared in front of the Conquest King. Shock flashed across his eyes as he cursed inwardly, "This guy's speed is as fast as teleportation. I can't see any trace of him at all." Even so, the Conquest King still waved his sword in front of him. "Your reflexes are not bad, but your speed is still too slow. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourselves for being too sad. The heavens have chosen me to participate in this war, and all of you heroic spirits are destined to be mere foils. Vanish, Conquest King." In the void, Dustless's soft sigh rang out. The light pierced through the Conquest King's body first. Pucci. The golden greatsword left a thick wound on the Conquest King's body. As Dustless used too much strength, he could even see the organs hidden in his body. Pucci. Having suffered an unprecedented injury, Iskandar spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned as pale as snow, and bean-sized beads of sweat uncontrollably rolled down his coarse face. Despicable guy. Looking down at Dustless, who was much shorter than him, the Conquest King's face was filled with indignation as he said hoarsely, "You are indeed extraordinary. Just a single move was enough to heavily injure me, a king. Am I getting old? My reflexes have become so sluggish that I couldn't even catch your shadow." The Conquest King smiled bitterly. His face was filled with shame and indignation. He never expected Dustless to be so terrifying, especially with his speed. He couldn't even catch a trace of him, and by the time he realized it, he had already been heavily injured by Dustless. Relax and close your eyes. Your opponent is the flash person who ate the flash fruit. His body has turned into light and he can unleash an absolute speed like light. Losing is inevitable. Chapter 17-18. Cough 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 cough. The Conquest King spurted out blood as he looked at the ghastly wound on his chest. A weak smile appeared on his coarse face as he propped himself on the ground with his greatsword to prevent himself from falling. He could not help but lament, "I'm destined to have no fate with the Holy Grail. My dream of conquering the world once again will go down the drain." However, immediately following that, the Conquest King's voice rose several times as all the magic power in his body erupted. The void began to change at an accelerated rate as the area turned into a desert without any warning. So. A cold wind suddenly blew in the pitch-black night sky. The world before his eyes suddenly became much brighter. Large amounts of yellow sand were mixed in with the strong winds that brushed past his shoulders. Is this an inherent enchantment? If I recall correctly, it's called the King's Army. This formation is truly extraordinary. As expected of the invincible army that swept through Europe, Asia, and Africa in the past. Dustless nodded his head in praise. The world before his eyes changed as time and space changed. He had arrived at an unfamiliar world. The formation of the world before him was even more exaggerated. There were densely packed figures that were as numerous as locusts. All of them were prostrating on the ground. It was a spectacular sight. Furthermore, all of them were kneeling on one knee as they looked at the conquest king with deep respect. The soldiers had no regrets in their eyes as they stared death in the face. It was a shock that came from the depths of one's soul. Huff huff huff. Sand danced in the air as he stepped on the barren desert. Dustless was filled with many emotions. The conquest king's attitude of being as high as the heavens was truly admirable. The sand danced in the air as it was formed from the corpses of his enemies. You're merely a withered willow, yet you're still able to display the scene of a hegemon that leaves one in awe. There's no harm in admitting that you're one of the few kings. Dustless spoke frankly as he looked at the army with indifference. His magnanimous eyes showed no fear. Have victory or defeat will be decided here. The conquest king rode on a black steed with a shiny mane as he endured the intense pain in his abdomen. He used all his strength to raise the long sword that represented an all-army attack. The enemy is a transcendent being from the universe. He's worlds apart from us mere mortals. But even so, I want him to witness the bravery of my army. Following that, the conquest king raised his long sword and slashed down. The sword was pointed at Dustless as the deathly still desert began to tremble. Ow 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 ow. The deafening roar deafened everyone. It was like an earthquake. Visible cracks appeared in the desert and gradually spread out. Boom boom boom. The conquest king and his army charged forward, leaving a mess wherever they went. Due to the terrifying commotion caused by the countless people charging forward, even the desert caved in an exaggerated manner. Unable to withstand the pressure, the desert began to crack. Swish, swish. Countless arrows and spears were fired at the same time, covering the entire sky. There was no way to dodge. The entire desert world was being ravaged by these arrows. Not to mention standing under the sun, even if they were to drill into the ground, they would probably be shot into a hornet's nest. Bang bang bang. Around Dustless, there were all kinds of arrows and spears piled up like a mountain. Enveloped in the golden light, Dustless was unable to penetrate the golden energy defensive wall, no matter how dense the attacks were. Let me show you something interesting. The golden double-faced Kinsusanu tightly enveloped Dustless. Furthermore, just like Dustless himself, the double-faced Kinsusanu formed the same hand seals as Dustless. Celestial obstruction quaking star. The somewhat bright void was suddenly covered by a shadow. The strange situation caused the charging army to be stunned. They all raised their heads to look into the depths of the void, including the conquest king and his soldiers. All of them widened their eyes. The super meteorite that covered the entire army slowly descended. As far as the eye could see, there was only the barren and deathly still meteorite. The entire world had been taken over by it. No wonder this fellow dares to call himself a god. This strength is fully deserving of it. The conquest king's lips trembled as he looked at the falling meteorite. The battle intent in his heart had completely collapsed. What a joke. Thinking back to how he had been so lawlessly rejoicing in his victory over Dustless, a self-mocking smile appeared on the conquest king's face. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. This was too embarrassing. Boom, boom, boom. As the meteorite slowly descended, the conquest king's army suffered a heavy blow. Not only did the army suffer heavy losses, the entire desert world was mercilessly attacked. The meteorite summoned by Dustless had turned it upside down. The conventional astroseismometer was only 2 meteorites, but this time, in order to express his respect for the conquest king, Dustless had summoned dozens of meteorites. The super meteorites that fell to the ground smashed the desert into smithereens. Ka-ka-ka. With a few crisp sounds, the inherent barrier that the conquest king had painstakingly constructed shattered like a mirror, returning him to the dark starry sky from before. As for the conquest king himself, he had long disappeared. He had been buried by the astroseismometer. The conquest king is also dead. If that's the case, the Holy Grail can appear. Dustless's body landed on the ground as he lowered his head in contemplation. The situation in the original work was the same as it was now. Excluding himself, only Saber and Archer were left. Logically speaking, they did not meet the requirements to summon the Holy Grail, but the Holy Grail had still appeared unexpectedly. This is bad. Alice Fair is the vessel of the Holy Grail. Suddenly thinking of the most thorny problem, Dustless could not help but raise his eyebrows. Should he kill Alice Fair with his own hands? He could not do such a thing. At the same time, Alice Fair was an indispensable vessel. Let's wait for the time being. After pondering for a while, Dustless could not make up his mind. Alice Fair had treated him quite well. Both of them were flesh and blood. It was impossible and unrealistic for him to cut her off so easily. Chapter 17-19. As for Web Velvet, Dustless completely ignored him. Whether he killed him or not, it did not change anything. Furthermore, he had previously promised Conquest King to spare him. Inside the Arinsbellen family's castle. Just after Dustless left, two uninvited guests arrived. One of them was the Hero King who was covered in sparkling gold, and the other was the new master of sparkling gold, Yen Fengili. Furthermore, the Hero King and Yen Fengili had engaged in an intense battle with Saber and Wei Gong Kisi. The development was identical to the original work. Although Saber had tried her best to fight the Hero King, with the battle nearly destroying the Arinsbellen family's castle, there was still a huge gap in strength. Spare was ultimately suppressed. If Saber had Avalon, she might have barely been able to put up a fight with Sparkling Gold. She might even have been able to defeat the Hero King, but the chances of relying on Excalibur to defeat the Hero King were zero. The outcome was still a tragic defeat for Saber. While retreating, Sparkling Gold had even stabbed Wei Gong Kisi, worsening his injuries. He could die at any moment. Furthermore, he could no longer provide magic power to Saber. Wei Gong Kisi could not even protect himself. Other than that, there was another terrible matter. Alice Fair had been captured. Those two bastards sure know how to pick the time. While I was challenging Ryder, they actually took the initiative to sneak attack the Arinsbellen family's castle. I was the one who was careless. I thought that the Hero King would not stoop to such despicable acts of sneak attacks. I overestimated him. In the ruins of the Arinsbellen family's castle, the majestic castle of the past had vanished into thin air. It was completely reduced to history. In a dilapidated room that could barely provide shelter from the elements, Saber was lying in bed with a pale face. And in another room, Wei Gong Kisi was in the same state. His situation was worse than Saber's. He had been beaten up by Yen Fengili and had been dealt the final blow by the Hero King. His body was on the brink of collapse. Now there were only 4 people who could still move: Kwai Enosaka, Rin Enosaka, Sakura Tama, and Dustless. Dustless was sitting on the sofa, rubbing his temples in distress. His mind was in a dead end and all the bad things were overlapping. His head was dizzy and he had a slight headache. Instead of sitting here doing nothing, why don't you hurry up and save Alice Field? A crisp child's voice rang out. Dustless looked up and saw Rin Enbin with his hands on his hips. What does a kid know? Dustless rolled his eyes. I really don't understand why Sister Alice Field didn't activate the command seal. That way I could have asked for your help, Rin Enbin muttered to himself in confusion. That's because the command incantation is useless against me. It's too difficult to bind me. Dustless shook his head. The source of the command incantation was actually the Great Holy Grail. Everything had its own limit. It was too difficult for a mere command seal to bind him. Alice Field's command incantation seemed to be able to control Dustless, but in reality, it was just a facade. Just like how Dustless didn't need Alice Field's magic, the two had nothing to do with each other. Even if Alice Field activated the command incantation, Dustless wouldn't be affected, let alone control him. Dustless, Rin's words make sense. Archer is harmful to Alice Field. If you don't save her, your heroic spirit won't be able to bear the consequences. Your body will disappear in a few days. Saber suddenly opened her eyes. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. She was very tired. Dustless used Mokutan to heal her wounds. It was enough to show how fierce the battle with Archer was. It's useless. Just now, I already felt that the vague practice with Alice Field was cut off. I'm afraid that Alice Field has been killed. I guess she has now become the carrier of the Holy Grail. Dustless said calmly. He could feel that the inextricable relationship with Alice Field was cut off in an instant. Bang! Saber smashed the quilt excitedly and whispered unwillingly, "Did we lose just like that? It's really unpleasant to lose to that guy." No, it's not over yet. Dustless shook his head mysteriously. So what if Alice Field is dead? In fact, after hearing that Alice Field was captured, Dustless's complicated thoughts were as calm as water. In this way he could end Alice Field's miserable fate. After the Holy Grail War was over, he could use outer path, reincarnation innate technique, to resurrect her. Both of us are about to be eliminated. Cutter is heavily injured, and it's too difficult to continue fighting. The mana he provides me is very little, and I'm seriously exhausted from the battle with Archer. I can feel that I will disappear soon. Spare's face was filled with loneliness and desolation. This was the first time she tasted defeat. We didn't lose, Dustless said, and then stared at Saber with his eyes like torches. You can devour my soul. That way you can continue to maintain your body and your mana will be increased. Souls were the nourishment of Sarvant. The mana loss could be made up through souls. Of course, there was also a method called mana replenishment, but Dustless was too embarrassed to say it. Devour your soul? Absolutely not. Saber heard that and felt warm in her heart. She gave a grateful look, but she still refused firmly. Sorry, I can't do that. You're really stubborn. Dustless shook his head again. So what if she devoured his soul? Dustless was quite confident in his soul. Not to mention that he had the body of a real ten-tailed beast. When he was in the Grim Reaper world, he had devoured a large number of souls. Not only that, he had also devoured the Soul King, which was the amalgamation of souls. Dustless's soul was almost infinite. Even if he was devoured by Saber, it did not matter. After all, he was backed by the sea and his soul was inexhaustible. Chapter 1720. You can't even hold on anymore, yet you want me to devour your soul? Saber did not know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless's master Alice Fair had already fallen. As a Sarvant he would disappear sooner or later. What soul was there left for Saber to devour? That's not a problem. Don't worry. I'm sure you've noticed that my way of existence is a little special. I don't need magic to maintain myself. Even if my master dies, my body will not disappear. Dustless said calmly. This was the advantage of being a traveler. That does seem to be the case. You've not been using magic all this time. It's a special power that I've never seen before. Saber remained silent. To be honest, she had thought about Dustless' way of existence before. It was indeed strange and unique. He did not need to use magic at all. His attacks were also completely different from magic. The two had nothing to do with each other. Is that really okay? What if something unexpected happens? Even if you regret it, it'll be too late. Saber's tone was high, and her haggard face was solemn as she reminded him. If I die just because someone absorbs some of my soul, then I can only blame myself for being unlucky. Dustless was all smiles. His casual tone was full of confidence. Phew. I really don't understand what you're thinking. Since you've decided to do this, I won't hold back. Saber saw Dustless's determined gaze and did not want to waste any more time. Saber was not the kind of person who would waste time. Especially now that she was pressed for time, there was no time for her to hesitate. Can you guys leave first? Saber looked awkwardly at Akui Enosaka, Rin Enosaka, and her mother. Saber's voice was very soft. It was rare for her to be so shy. The weirdest thing was that Saber's face was flushed. Hey, are you trying to take advantage of her? You're using such a shameless method to help Saber recover her magic. That's despicable. A disdainful voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned his head and saw the mischievous Rin Enosaka. She was staring at him with an ambiguous expression. Isn't it just devouring a soul? What's there to be embarrassed about? Besides, we're all heroic spirits, so there's no need to be so alarmed. Dustless didn't even think about it and asked without hesitation. Also, quickly put away your wretched eyes. Dustless was inwardly puzzled. Although Rin Enosaka was only a few years old, his thoughts were truly unflattering. You'll know soon enough. Rin Enosaka patted Dustless's shoulder with an expression that said, take care of yourself. Then he left in high spirits. Rin Enosaka wasn't the only one who had a strange expression on his face. Even Kue Enosaka had the same expression. Did I make a mistake somewhere? Noticing that everyone was looking at him strangely, Dustless lowered his head and asked himself. His knowledge of magic was pitifully little. Even a brat like Rin Enbin knew more than him. Dustless only knew that there were two ways to recover one's mana. One was to replenish one's mana, and the other was to devour other people's souls. Bang! With a dull thud, only Dustless and Saber were left in the spacious room. Saber suddenly sat down beside Dustless. Her face was flushed red and she was abnormally shy. Is there something wrong? Saber. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but ask loudly, it's just absorbing souls, it's not like... Dustless almost blurted out the words replenishing mana, but at the crucial moment he quickly stopped himself. Don't you know the exact process? This time it was Saber's turn to be shocked. She stared into Dustless's eyes, her clear eyes unreadable. In a trance, she seemed to be able to see through Dustless's mind. It doesn't look like you're lying. Saber gritted her teeth and took advantage of Dustless's carelessness to push him down, her entire body lying on top of Dustless's body. Plop. Caught off guard, Dustless was pressed to the ground. He stared blankly at Saber. He didn't expect her to suddenly attack him. Staring at the red lips so close to his, he seemed to have understood something. No wonder Ling and the others made such expressions. So this is how Saber wants to absorb my soul. No wonder she's so embarrassed. Dustless suddenly understood. If he guessed correctly, Saber might be absorbing his soul through mouth-to-mouth contact. Closing her eyes, Saber endured the discomfort in her body and sealed Dustless's mouth. Soft. Tastes good. Dustless's mind was in a daze. He didn't expect Saber to counterattack. At the same time, he felt a strange force enter his body from Saber's mouth. It didn't have a physical body and it was invisible to the touch, but it was real. It kept pulling at his mind and devouring the majestic soul in Dustless's body. This guy is really a freak. After about 10 seconds, Saber's eyes widened as she stared at Dustless, who was lying flat on the bed. At first, she was only absorbing Dustless's soul slightly, but later she was shocked to find that the boundless soul was vast and boundless. Saber finally understood what Dustless meant when he said that no matter how much water one took from the sea, there was an endless supply. She worked harder to suck Dustless's mouth, and Saber's mana was quickly restored. Chapter 1721. The mana in Saber's body was quickly recovering, and it was increasing rapidly. Her original mana had recovered, and it even showed signs of reaching its peak. Saber's complexion also recovered, and her pale face flashed with a healthy redness. After a long time, Dustless and Saib finally parted their lips. No, you can't be a heroic spirit. You have such a terrifying soul. Even if you devoured the souls of all the humans in the world, you still wouldn't be able to reach such a level. Dustless, I'm getting more and more curious about your background. You really are an enigma. Saber, you're already a heroic spirit. Why do you care about your past life? Let go of those trivial matters. Even if you know about my background, it won't do you any good. In short, if I get the Holy Grail, I'll give it to you. Dustless moved a little and took a few deep breaths. When Saber suddenly covered his mouth just now, he almost suffocated. Is there something wrong with my ears? Are you planning to give me the Holy Grail to fulfill my wish? Saber sighed, and there was a rare hint of bitterness in her voice. Dustless, I always feel like you're hiding a lot of secrets from me. As allies, we should know each other well. TSK. How fragrant. But then again, I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. A look of infatuation flashed across Saber's face. Wu Chen's careless words made Saber embarrassed. Your attitude and appearance are a little different. However, Saber did not get angry. Instead, she pouted like a little girl and continued to complain. Compared to an ordinary woman, I prefer you to treat me like a servant. Cough, cough, cough. Hearing this, Dustless coughed twice and stared at the cheap red Saber. He couldn't help but lament. Saber, your side as a knight is very charming, but as a woman, it's also like a soul-sucking poison. Thank you for your compliment, but I really can't feel happy about it. Saber was unmoved. There was not even a ripple on her face. She was very calm. From the moment she pulled out the sword in the stone, she had forgotten that she was a woman. Now it's about time to find trouble with Gold Shinny. Dustless stood up and stretched his body. A sinister look flashed across his eyes. Golden glitter? Are you talking about Archer? After Saber was taken aback, her fair chin gently nodded a few times. She suddenly recalled the gorgeous attire of the Hero King. He was definitely worthy of the title of Golden Twinkle. At this moment, in another direction. Is this the Holy Grail? It's different from what I imagined. The Hero King and Yin Fengili stood side by side. The former looked at the golden Holy Grail in front of him with disappointment. It was embedded with all kinds of gorgeous and resplendent gems. Furthermore, a crimson liquid similar to fresh blood was flowing out of the Holy Grail. However, the Hero King and Yin Fengili's performances were mediocre. The two of them did not feel much as they looked at the Holy Grail that was filled with liquid. Not only were they not happy, they even felt somewhat defeated. Especially the Hero King, who had a bored expression. I don't care about this disgusting thing. Even if I have it in my collection, I will throw it into the trash. The Hero King's tone was filled with disdain towards the Holy Grail that everyone yearned for. Yin Fengili was the same. He looked at the Holy Grail calmly. He was not happy, but if he was disappointed, there was also a faint joy. It was quite contradictory. Ah, so this is what the Holy Grail looks like. This disgusting smell? Is it all from the liquid in the Holy Grail? An indifferent voice descended from the sky. A ray of light flashed in the void. Looking up, they saw Dustless hugging Spare as bright as a shooting star. They looked at the mysterious black liquid with curiosity. It looked like black mud and was filled with the smell of blood. To be honest, the smell was really uncomfortable. It was the complete opposite of the legendary universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail. In most people's eyes, the Holy Grail was a holy and noble existence like an angel. This bastard. He actually dared to hug her without my permission. Completely ignoring the Holy Grail, the Hero King looked up at the sky. When he saw Dustless hugging Saber, his blood-red eyes immediately flashed with a ferocious shock wave. All this while, the Hero King had treated Saber as his exclusive property. Although he had never said it out loud, he had subconsciously taken Saber for himself, believing that she was his possession. Now, his possession was being held by someone else, and it was an enemy he found most displeasing to the eye. The Hero King's pride immediately shattered to the ground. TSK, is this guy really the Hero King? Is he really the oldest Hero King of humanity? With such a narrow-minded mindset, his character is also unflattering. Dustless's line of sight happened to see the gloomy archer, the Hero King. The flames in his blood-red gemstone eyes burned fiercely. Dustless naturally knew what this guy was thinking. The Hero King's fragile pride had once again been dealt a heavy blow by Dustless and Saber's public display of affection. It was a mental blow that could not be ignored. After all, Dustless was hugging Saber. The two of them flying through the void gave off a romantic feeling. They were like a celestial couple, extremely intimate and harmonious. And Saber was like a little bird leaning on Dustless's chest. The majestic Night King of the past was like an obedient little girl. Chapter 1722. A few seconds later, Dustless and Saber also landed on the ground. As for Weigong Qixi, he was also on his way here. Seeing that the Holy Grail War was about to end, Weigong Qixi naturally did not want the Holy Grail to be taken by someone else first. Therefore this guy forced himself to endure the bleeding wound and slowly rushed over. The two of you sure know how to put on airs. The Hero King's body shimmered as he stared at Saber, who was hugging Dustless. Unable to vent his anger, he clenched his fists and roared, "Regardless of what happens today, 8th heroic spirit, you must die here for this king." Why does this fellow look like he ate gunpowder? Did someone offend him? Saber frowned and looked up, only to see Archer's face as dark as a black pot. Who offended him? Of course it was. Dustless curled his lips and looked down on the petty Hero King. Even though he was known as the most ancient king, humanity's oldest super king, and looked down on all life like a god, the Hero King's attitude was truly unflattering. Upon seeing this scene, the Hero King's eyes widened. The suppressed flames in his heart could no longer remain dormant. Just as he was about to reprimand Dustless, Dustless suddenly did something even more overboard. "Hero King, your attitude is as puny as a worm." Dustless mocked in an eccentric manner. He looked down on the so-called most ancient king. "It's not up to you to point fingers at me. Stay away from Saber. That belongs to the king." A scream that sounded like a pig being slaughtered resounded through the void. The Hero King was enraged as he nearly exploded. His face was burning red as veins protruded on his forehead. Gilgamesh seems a little off. Could it be that he has feelings for Saber? What a joke. Isn't this fellow a heroic spirit? Yen Fengili looked oddly at the Hero King before looking at Dustless and Saber. Suddenly he came to a realization and could not help but pity the Hero King. He sighed and said, "This is just fancy dog abuse. By agitating Archer like this, you will completely offend him." Saber was at a loss whether to laugh or cry at Dustless's thoughts. It was as though the angrier the Hero King was, the happier he was. "Since we are mortal enemies, even if I don't agitate the Hero King, this bastard will still kill us all." This was the Holy Grail War. Only one saint would be enough. Everyone else could just die. This is called a psychological blow. Look at how the bastard, the hero king, is stamping with rage. Who knows if that bastard will faint from the anger? When that happens, we can subdue him without a fight. Dustless laughed heartily as he ignored the hero king's constipated expression. This guy, why is he so angry? Saber also noticed the odd expression on the hero king's face. Immediately, she wore an odd expression. She could not figure out why this bastard was so angry. It felt like his wife had been snatched away by Dustless. Since you wish to suffer this king's wrath so much, I'll grant you your wish. Darn bastard. The infuriated hero king exploded. With a wave of his hand, the void was filled with countless golden beams of light. Immediately following that, countless divine weapons appeared. A dense barrage of attacks came pouring down as cold beams filled the void. Accompanied by the hero king's rage, the number reached a level that left one in despair. Ignorant fool, aren't you embarrassed to take out such a thing to embarrass yourself? Hurry up and pull out your ye. If you cause a huge commotion and I kill you, I'll be embarrassed. Raising his head to scan the various weapons floating above the hero king's head, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He was unperturbed. Following that, he gently raised his right arm and flicked out a beam of light from his finger. Binding Dao's 81, space shattering. A transparent barrier instantly appeared. It was as thin as a cicada's wing, not even as thick as a fingernail. You wish to use such a thing to resist this king's attack? Do you think I'm trash like Lancer and Berserker? This is blasphemy to this king. Bastard. The hero king bellowed angrily. He was pissed off by Dustless's pathetic look. He even felt nauseous as he felt uncomfortable all over. Who the hell needs your pity? Boom, boom. The densely packed noble artifacts all crashed onto the enchantment. The continuous attacks were like a tidal wave, constantly destroying the seemingly weak enchantment that could not withstand a single blow from the sky-severing barrier. It won't shatter, right? Saber was rather nervous. Once the barrier was shattered, she and Dustless would probably be riddled with holes by the enraged hero king. Boom, boom, boom. The barrage of attacks continued. There were more than 1,000 treasures that shot out from the gate of Babylon, but what was shocking was that no matter how many attacks they launched, they failed to tear apart Dustless's space-shattering barrier. How boring. Didn't I say before that as long as you pull out your EA, the might will be enough to tear apart this barrier? Dustless's tone suddenly paused as he pointed at the golden treasures that littered the ground and advised, "It's best you pick up such fancy moves while it's still early." Did this darn bastard say that on purpose? The hero king was so angry that his hair stood on end. If Dustless had not said that, it would have been fine. There was nothing wrong with him taking out his EA, but now, if he were to take out his EA according to Dustless's wishes, his reputation as the hero king would be completely ruined. Do you think I'll take it out just because you say so? You aren't worthy. The hero king cupped his fists and snorted coldly. He waved his hand once again as the golden light above his head shot out a large number of weapons once again. With a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas, they came crashing down on Dustless and Saber. You don't appreciate my kind advice at all. Dustless could not help but shake his head when he saw the situation. He leisurely snapped his fingers and with a pah sound, large ripples appeared in the void. It was as though they had suddenly appeared around the sun. The blinding light was scorching and blinding. Of course, Gilgamesh's face turned green. Chapter 1723. There was only one user of the King's Babylon in the past, Hero King Gilgamesh. But now things were different. There was a brand new user, and his proficiency and control was something even the original user, the Hero King, could not match. After all, Dustless had been using the King's Babylon for centuries. In terms of time, it far exceeded the Hero King's, so it was reasonable for his attainment to be above his. Above Dustless's head, a resplendent beam of light with a domineering aura flashed. It was roughly the same as the golden beam above the Hero King's head. They were suffused with an ancient and desolate aura. Today I'll finish you off completely, you imposter. Dustless's thin arm waved gently as all sorts of enviable treasures surged out. Without exception they were all peerless divine artifacts. Darn bastard, you are clearly the imposter, yet you are slandering me? The Hero King flew into a rage when he heard this. He was the most ancient king. Back when there was only one world, one person had once obtained all the treasures in the world. Everything in the world belonged to this king. He was the hero king of ancient Uruk, Gilgamesh. Now, as the true hero king, Gilgamesh felt aggrieved when Dustless accused him of being an impostor. These two bastards. Saber was abnormally speechless. The hero king had a large number of treasures above his head, and so did Dustless. There were all sorts of treasures that left people dazzled, envious and hateful. Ignoring others, even Saber herself felt jealous. Dustless and the hero king could even take out the original form of Excalibur. The one who suffered the greatest blow from this clash was not the hero king but Saber. Watching the two tycoons battle and seeing them take out all sorts of legendary treasures made her feel sad. Crush him. Disappear, you eyesore of gold. Dustless and the hero king waved their hands at the same time as the large number of treasures gathered on their foreheads shot out without leaving a single one behind. Boom, boom, boom. High up in the sky, hundreds of treasures began to clash. The scene was spectacular as resplendent sparks flashed incessantly. Both sides destroyed each other's treasures as the ground was filled with metal debris. What kind of joke is this? Why would I lose to such an impostor? The hero king stared intently at the debris on the ground as he looked at the indifferent Dustless. He revealed a look of shock. Their treasured artifacts continued clashing, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Dustless was superior. Compared to the hero king who was aimlessly venting the flames in his heart, Dustless's usage was much more ingenious. Shushu. The treasure artifact that the hero king shot out from the king's treasure was once again shattered by the treasure artifact under Dustless's control, reducing it to metal scraps that filled the ground. Damn it, damn it. Damn it, damn it. Shoo. No one would be able to accept losing to a person he hated the most in a domain he was best at. It was absolutely intolerable, much less the hero king who thought highly of himself. Heaven lock. Shoo. So. A strange-looking chain drilled out of the void as it dodged the oncoming treasures. Like a venomous snake, it went straight for Dustless. If you are caught by Heaven Lock, you are definitely dead. The hero king's blood-red eyes churned with bloodlust as his face suffused a ruthless and ferocious look. He made up his mind that the moment he captured Wuxian, he would immediately brandish his saber to finish off the eyesore. Shoo. Is this guy going easy on me? Does he think I'm not his match? Not only did the hero king not rejoice when he saw this, his eyebrows pricked up as he wondered, is this guy doing this on purpose? Is he looking down on me? Compared to Ye, I actually trust Heaven Lock more. Ka. Just as he planned on continuing his verbal assault on Dustless, the hero king was smacked in the face. He felt a burning pain as a crack appeared in the heavenly lock that could not be unlocked. Even the god of Heaven Lock can't break free? Don't be so full of yourself. No matter what kind of attack it is, it has a limit. If it exceeds that limit, then any wonderful move will collapse on its own. The heavenly lock actually shattered. How is this possible? The heavenly lock is used as a divine rule. The higher the divinity of the captive, the harder the chain will be, and the harder it will be to break free. The hero king's face was ashen as though he had eaten a fly. It was extremely cheap and fascinating. No matter how much he thought about it, he never imagined that Dustless would be able to shatter the heaven lock so easily. The process was as simple and easy as eating and drinking. Chapter 1724. It was no wonder the hero king would reveal such a bitter expression. To him, the heavenly lock had always been successful. Ordinary people could only dream of escaping the heavenly lock's shackles, much less destroy it. But now Dustless had done it. And it was so simple. Unforgivable. The hero king was enraged as he locked his gaze onto Dustless. His blood-red eyes protruded outwards, giving off a feeling of horror that was about to burst out of his eye sockets. You don't seem to have heard what I said before. Sweeping a glance at the hero king who was about to go berserk, Dustless knew that what he had said before was nonsense. It was best to continue fighting. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. His body transformed into a formless beam of light as he instantly appeared in front of the hero king. Heavenly gathering cloud sword. Light swirled in his hand as a divine sword that could slice through metal like mud flashed. What fast speed! Turning his head, the hero king was alarmed. Although he was unable to capture Dustless's speed, and he did not even have the time to react, his natural sense of danger and intuition had sensed the impending danger. Without a second thought, the Hero King dodged and retreated. Too slow. Dustless shot forward with his sword in hand. Like a shadow, he appeared in front of the Hero King in a split second. Under the latter's horrified gaze, the heavenly gathering cloud sword swept out. Pucci. Blood splattered out of the void as a glaring mark appeared on the Hero King's gorgeous armor. The defensive armor was pulverized, and one could see the skin that had been sliced apart. How dare you, Shu? However, Dustless did not give the Hero King a chance to speak any more nonsense. The glint fruit's powers were activated once again as a straight beam of light stopped above the Hero King's forehead. No good. Seeing the flash above his head, the Hero King's pupils constricted. The space behind him produced a ripple once again as the sharp gemstone sword was unsheathed. The Hero King had an abnormally ferocious expression as he slashed at Dustless's waist. His strength was raised to the limits of his life. From the looks of it, he planned on slicing Dustless in half. Naive. Dustless's dry lips curled into a contemptuous smile. His pupils spun as his eye powers blasted out. Immediately following that, the corners of his mouth opened slightly as he spat out two simple words. Immediately he resolved the Hero King's fatal attack. Divine might. A slight ripple of energy appeared in the sky, and a tiny vortex appeared. Dustless's abdomen throbbed inexplicably, and in an instant, it lost its substance. Pucci. The broadsword's beam penetrated Dustless's body. The Hero King was overjoyed as he stared at the wound in anticipation. He thought that it would be a beautiful scene of him being sliced in half. To everyone's surprise, the sensation that came from his hand left the Hero King in a daze. He had clearly struck Dustless's body, but the feeling he got was like a sword sweeping across invisible air. It was completely useless. Dustless's body seemed to suddenly turn incorporeal as he vanished without a trace. Lightspeed kick. Taking advantage of the Hero King's moment of carelessness, Dustless's tiny foot, which was covered in light, struck him with all its might. Boom, boom, boom. A flaming mushroom cloud rose from the Hero King's body as he was sent flying hundreds of meters away by Dustless's kick. His shining armor lost its luster as it was charred black. Not only that, certain parts of his body could not withstand the force of the explosion as they caved in. Ah! A roar that caused one's body to tremble rang out. Those who were touched by the sound wave all retreated, their hearts trembling in fear from that furious roar. Kill you. I have to kill you. I have to tear you to pieces. A neurotic and sharp roar came out of the Hero King's throat. On a closer look, his body was severely charred. His head of golden hair had been ignited by Dustless's lightspeed kick, burning him to a crisp. Since you want to die so much, I'll grant you your wish. The Hero King was completely enraged. The space around his right hand produced a ripple as a golden circle appeared. Following that, a strange-looking spiral weapon slowly emerged. Is it ye? Finally decided to get serious. Dustless nodded slightly when he saw the situation. Following that, a teasing and playful look flashed across his face. Focusing on the Hero King who was about to go berserk, Dustless suddenly shouted, Heaven Lock! In the void, a series of massive chains shot out as they wantonly danced. This time the user of the Heaven Lock and the target of the attack had changed. The person who cast the spell had become Dustless, while the target of the attack had become the Hero King. It was the exact opposite of the previous outcome. Scram, you hateful thing! The Hero King roared as a large number of treasures shot out from the void behind him, destroying the Heaven Lock that was attacking him. Dustless laughed sinisterly in his heart as his gaze landed on the Hero King's feet. Ka. The ground beneath his feet suddenly exploded. The Hero King, who realized the danger, retreated in a flash, but it was too late. The golden chains that had been prepared for a long time instantly captured him. The Hero King stared intently at the chains that wrapped around him. This was the first time in his life that he had a look of despair. He said helplessly, It's actually the Heaven Lock. I'm screwed. As the owner of the Heaven Lock, the Hero King naturally knew how terrifying the Heaven Lock was. To ordinary humans, the Heaven Lock was just a sturdy chain without anything special. But if the target was a god, the problem would be terrible. The Heaven Lock was a weapon against gods. To put it simply, it was meant to punish gods. It was of little use against mortals. And the Hero King happened to possess 2/3 of the divine spark, so the threat the Heaven Lock posed to him was absolutely fatal. Chapter 1725. Although the Hero King was powerful, he was similarly helpless against his own noble artifact. All he could do was stare helplessly at the glaring chains. Suddenly he found the heaven lock extremely disgusting. The Hero King could not help but feel nauseous as he vomited. Hero King, although you are powerful, you do not have any immunity against your own noble artifact, right? Especially as a demigod, it's impossible for you to resist the heaven lock. Dustless chuckled in schadenfreude. The uniqueness of the heaven lock lay in this. To gods, it was extremely lethal, but to ordinary humans, it was just an ordinary chain. And the Hero King happened to have 2/3 of the divine spark. Hence, the heaven lock's restraint on him was multiplied. Damn it! Damn it! The Hero King was like a hooligan as he cursed incessantly. Looking at the chains that were tightly wrapped around his left arm, he suddenly felt a sense of mockery. His face turned purple from anger. The Hero King never dreamed that he would fall at the hands of heaven shackles. Heaven shackles were often used by the Hero King to punish others, but he never expected that Dustless would use heaven shackles to punish him. How dare he? Then I'll use the A to tear you apart. After struggling with all his might, the Hero King helplessly realized that he had no way of escaping the heaven lock. It was as though he had met his nemesis. The greater his strength, the harder the heaven lock became. You plan on using the parting sword A to tear me apart? Are you sure you can do it? Also, a deep smile flashed across Dustless's face. With a gentle wave of his right hand, a strange sword that looked identical to the parting sword in the Hero King's hand appeared in Dustless's palm. This fellow can also use the parting sword. The Hero King's arrogant eyes flashed a look of caution. He knew the strength of his noble artifact like the back of his hand. If he was unlucky, he might really be reduced to ashes by the terrifying power of the parting sword A. After all, the parting sword A was known as a sword that could destroy the world. Saber. Suddenly, Dustless looked at the distant saber and reminded her, instead of watching me battle with this shiny gold, why don't you take the opportunity to snatch the sacred grail? After being reminded by Dustless, Saber, who had been watching the battle, came back to her senses. The scene of Dustless crushing Gold Sparkly was so satisfying that Saber was momentarily dazed. Seeing Golden Twinkle being brutally beaten up by Dustless, especially being burned to a crisp by Dustless, with his hair charred, turning the Hero King into a bald head, Saber felt a sense of relief. Even Yen Feng Chi Li was looked down upon beyond the clouds. Is it that funny? I hope the two of you can still laugh later. The Hero King's cold gaze swept back and forth. It was as bone-piercing as an icy blade. Anyone who met his tyrannical gaze would feel a prickling pain and discomfort on their skin. Have a taste of my wrath. An arrogant smile suffused the Hero King's face as he caressed, obedient parting sword. He stared at Dustless in a cool and awesome manner. Instantly he found immense confidence. Ka. The obedient parting sword began spinning rapidly as a red spiral halo burst out. The relatively calm sky immediately stirred with a biting cold wind. Not only that, the void began to crack visibly. Then let's see who's stronger. Dustless smiled faintly when he saw this. The obedient parting sword in his hand began spinning rapidly as an extremely destructive and sharp wind wave blasted out. Enoma Elish. The Hero King, who was the first to lose his cool, launched an attack as a dense energy ripple surged over. The surrounding void was instantly obliterated. Haha, Hero King. You shout with such grandeur. You don't look too bad on the surface. Dustless chuckled as he looked at the incoming red vortex. Space began to slowly disintegrate. Dustless threw out obedient parting sword in his hand. Annihilate him. Compared to the sonorous and valiant Hero King, Dustless's tone was a lot more ordinary. Boom, boom, boom. The two violent energy ripples collided, causing the void to tremble violently. The two forces that were in a stalemate struggled against each other, and the violent impact that erupted shattered the surrounding space. That's all there is to it. Looking at the deadlocked energy ripples, the Hero King suddenly laughed happily. He had always been crushed by Dustless. Even a genuine Hero King like him had been called a fake. Now he had finally regained some of his confidence. No, you've lost. Gently lifting his eyelids to glance at the Hero King, Dustless's mind stirred slightly as Celestial Lock pulled the Hero King over. He approached the area where the two obedient parting swords were clashing. Poochie, poochie, poochie. Under the influence of the powerful energy ripples, the Hero King's body began to gradually collapse. This bastard plans on using the shockwaves from the obedient parting sword to finish me off? How can I let you do as you wish? The Hero King clenched his teeth as he understood Dustless's true intentions. He took the initiative to distance himself from the massive energy ripples. Just the powerful energy ripples from the clash of the two obedient parting swords was enough to vanquish the Hero King. And at that moment, a jaw-dropping turn of events happened. It disrupted the ending that was about to come to an end. Saber, I'm now using a command curse to order you to immediately give up your plans on the Holy Grail. Begin attacking that man Dustless. Join forces with Archer to finish him off. The sudden order froze the scene as everyone stared in shock at the panting figure. Kisi, are you sick? Why would you give such a stupid order? Seeing that the Holy Grail was about to be hers, Saber's limbs immediately lost control. With her sword in hand, she turned around and slowly walked towards Dustless. Sorry Saber, there's only one Holy Grail and it only has one owner, Weigong Kisi. So it's best you join forces with the Hero King to kill Dustless. Chapter 1726. This guy is really vicious. Dustless stared deeply at Weigong Kisi. He did not expect him to be so shameless. Weigong Kisi, you ungrateful thing. Don't you know who helped you obtain the Holy Grail? Now you want to kill the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness? You are really despicable. Without waiting for Dustless to speak, Saber angrily reprimanded loudly, You want me and Dustless to kill each other so that no one can stop you from obtaining the Holy Grail. Is this your goal? As Weigong Kisi used the power of the command curse, Saber could not resist at all. Her body uncontrollably walked towards Dustless. You are too naive, Saber. The Hero King glanced at Saber and said indifferently, In the so-called Holy Grail War, there is only one true saint. This person is definitely not one of us heroic spirits. That's right. The so-called heroic spirits are just tools used to kill. Weigong Kisi added without any guilt. Come and fulfill my wish. Holy Grail. Weigong Kisi's eyes turned fanatical as he stared at the liquid overflowing from the Holy Grail. Weigong Kisi, you want to obtain the Holy Grail? I will definitely not allow it. You better *CK off. I need to use the Holy Grail to solve my doubts. Yanfeng Kisi stared at Weigong Kisi unkindly. He stood in front of him like a wall. His hands were clenched tightly as he got into an attacking stance. You are Dustless, right? Ah, fate is really cruel. Looking at Dustless's calm face, the Hero King laughed maniacally. Things in this world are just so bizarre. A second ago we were allies who treated each other with sincerity. Now we are enemies. Ah, sorry Dustless. My body is out of control. Saber was sweating profusely. Her body could not resist the command of Weigong Kisi's command curse. There is no need to apologize. The final outcome between heroic spirits is always like this, killing. Dustless did not mind. After all, there was only one owner of the Holy Grail. Your inexplicable confidence is really annoying. The Hero King raised his voice as he looked at Dustless with extreme displeasure. Alright, I might as well admit that you are very strong. You are so strong that I can't deal with you alone. However, with two kings attacking simultaneously, I do not understand what gives you the confidence to deal with us. No, Gilgamesh. From the beginning to the end, I only have one enemy. The so-called two kings besieging me is just your wishful thinking. Dustless shook his finger. Do you think Saber is on the same side as you? Don't be naive. The Hero King curled his lips and said with a sneer, Just now Saber's master used the command hex to give the command. You must have heard the content very clearly, Destroy Dustless. Idiot. Upon seeing this, Dustless revealed a hopeless expression. Noticing that he could not communicate with the Hero King normally, he immediately took action. Swish. Swish. The golden flash swept out and pounced straight at Gilgamesh. Quickly leave Dustless. Saber warned him loudly. She was filled with hatred for Weigong Kisi. Dustless had helped her numerous times, and if not for Dustless contributing his soul to raise her demonic powers, Saber might have already vanished. Looking up, he saw Saber raise Excalibur. Furthermore, it was covered in a large amount of destructive golden light. An extremely oppressive and powerful slash enveloped Dustless. Swish, swish. However, Dustless, who had transformed into a flash of light, ignored it. He continued charging straight for the Hero King. Boom, boom. Boom. Even though Saber did not wish to use her slash, due to the command hex's command, a massive beam of light swept out. It was about to swallow Dustless whole. Boom. 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 The golden slash tore through the thistles and thorns as it headed straight for Dustless to devour. A good opportunity? Upon seeing this, the Hero King's eyes lit up. The obedient parting sword, in his hand, began spinning at high speeds once again. A red vortex of energy ripples burst out. What a miracle. The Hero King and the Night King, these two archenemies, actually joined forces one day. Dustless could not help but find it laughable. As everyone knew, Saber and Archer were archenemies. The two of them could be said to be natural enemies. The two of them had fought fiercely during the two Holy Grail Wars. Now they had actually joined forces to deal with him. Dustless felt that the world was unpredictable. Both of you are famous figures in history. Then let me be a little more serious. With his gaze focused, large amounts of chakra erupted from Dustless's body as it gathered and circulated around his body. A super monster formed completely from energy suddenly appeared. Ao 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 ao. It was a monster formed from the energy in Dustless's body, but it had reached a shocking level. Under Dustless's control, it was as though it had been given life as it let out an earth-shattering roar. The deafening roar caused one's soul to tremble. Layer after layer of chakra broke out of his body and quickly fused with it. Gradually, it turned into a huge figure. It was an exaggerated monster formed completely from energy. It was like a shark that had emerged from the water, revealing its ferocious appearance. It was wearing a simple armor with a ferocious Tengu armor on its head. Its extremely evil eyes were like the embodiment of a nightmare. It emitted a powerful force that made one's heart palpitate. Its huge body was extraordinarily mighty and filled with explosive power. Not to mention a complete Kinsusanu, even if it was a bug that was dozens of meters long, it would definitely cause a ruckus. Chapter 1727. What is that strange thing? The Hero King's eyes widened as his eyes darted around in shock. Buzz. A golden light covered the sky as the entire world was bathed in golden light. Looking up, a super behemoth suddenly appeared. Its exaggerated height of 100 meters left the Hero King dumbfounded. This is Dustless's true face? Sensing the ancient aura exuding from the prehistoric giant, Saber muttered to herself in a daze. Even if Wei Gong Qixi used command curse to order me and Archer to join forces, it doesn't seem like we can defeat Dustless. If that's the case, I have a clear conscience. Sensing the invincible aura of the giant that could annihilate the world, Saber wasn't disappointed or sad. Instead, she revealed a charming smile. As a knight, she abided by the ideals of knights. Dustless had done her a favor, but because of Wei Gong Qixi's orders, she had no choice but to draw her sword against Dustless. This made her feel guilty. Now that Dustless had the strength to deal with her and Archer, Saber was truly happy. At the same time, the massive golden light slammed into Kinsusanu's retreating body, instantly devouring its massive leg. Boom, boom, boom. An intense explosion suddenly spread out. Kinsusanu's massive body only trembled slightly before remaining motionless. When the smoke dissipated, Kinsusanu didn't even have a single wound left on it. Gulp. Seeing this scene, Saber choked in disbelief. The sharpness of Excalibur was self-evident. She knew it very well, but now that she had attacked the monster with all her might, it didn't even leave a scratch. This truly refreshed Saber's understanding. Darn pervert. The Hero King was also dumbfounded when he saw this, as he could not help but curse. Many years ago, I was already in a different dimension from the both of you. Inside the golden complete Kinsusanu, Dustless looked down at the two people on the ground expressionlessly. Finally, Kinsusanu's tachi of light was unsheathed. Clang, clang, clang. The huge blade, which was more than 10 meters long, shone brightly in the sky. It was as terrifying as a guillotine. Of course, the target of this guillotine was not one or two people. It was the entire Eastern Mu world. Hero King? Now do you understand what I meant by my previous words? In front of the complete Kinsusanu, all moves are weak. Under the control of his mind, Kinsusanu perfect form lifted the tachi of light. Bastard, give me my holy grail. Kinsusanu's perfect form's descent also shocked Wei Gong Qixi and Yen Feng Qili, especially when they saw Kinsusanu's 100-meter-tall super figure. Wei Gong Qixi's heart was filled with despair. F***ck, even if the two kings joined forces, they would not be a match for this monster. You want me to give you the Holy Grail? Dream on. No. You should just die, you despicable Wei Gong Qixi. Yen Feng Qili sneered coldly. In his opinion, Wei Gong Qixi was a hypocrite. He was clearly an evil wolf, so why was he pretending to be kind? He even had delusions of becoming a righteous partner. What a joke. Don't even think of stopping me from obtaining the Holy Grail. Without any hesitation, he pounced towards Wei Gong Qixi. It was impossible for him to hand over the Holy Grail. There was no room for negotiation. Yen Feng Qili also had endless doubts, hoping to get the answer from the Holy Grail. Gulp. The Hero King stared at the super-huge sword in the sky with his mouth agape. He could not hide the fear in his heart as his body began to retreat uncontrollably. What kind of joke is this? It's just a scam. There's no way I'm afraid. The Hero King's face flushed red with anger. At the same time, a bright light flashed behind him. An ancient flying device inlaid with gorgeous gems flew out from the gate of Babylon. His handsome face was filled with indescribable determination. He decisively jumped onto the gorgeous flying device. From the looks of it, he wanted to fight to the death with Dustless to settle the matter. Fool who doesn't know his limits. Seeing the Hero King soar into the sky without any fear, Dustless could not help but shake his head. He gently swung the perfect form Consisanu's saber out. Shoo. The massive saber blade immediately stood out as it charged straight at the Hero King, who was like a king of the sky. So powerful. The Hero King's eyes could not help but twitch. Even though the saber wind had yet to approach his body, he could not help but catch a glimpse of the shadow of death. To this day, Dustless's Consisanu had already reached the pinnacle of perfection, shocking the world. Ka. The perfect form Consisanu's might was too immense. The flying device that the Hero King was controlling seemed to have lost its effectiveness. It began to wander around uncontrollably, as though it could tilt and be destroyed at any moment. Don't underestimate me. The Hero King, who was feeling pissed, exploded. Obedient parting sword once again unleashed an extremely destructive attack. He stared at the incoming saber wind and used all his strength to shoot out the edge. Enuma, Elish. Two powerful moves, in a situation where there was no one to stop them, inevitably collided. A superstorm that wanted to destroy the world spread out. Excalibur, at the same time, Saber, who was under the control of the command curse, also launched a lethal attack at Dustless. The combined attack of Saber and the Hero King was surprisingly powerful. However, as for Saber's attack, it was completely ignored by Dustless. It was not that he looked down on her, but with his present strength, the chances of him cracking the strengthened perfect form Consisanu was 0. Therefore, Dustless naturally had nothing to worry about. Chapter 1728. Boom, 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 boom. Saber's Excalibur struck Consisanu's perfect form, immediately producing large amounts of smoke and dust. Blazing flames soared into the sky. So. A cold wind blew from the rift, revealing the perfect form Consisanu's quaint and unscathed body. What a detestable evildoer. At the very least, he should have gone easy on me. At least we can be considered acquaintances. Saber gave a wry smile as he made a rare joke to amuse himself. He had been dealt a blow by the perfect form Consisanu's indestructible defense. At the same time, the saber wind produced by the perfect form Consisanu and the sharpness of obedient parting sword made close contact. Boom, boom, boom. The void immediately trembled as a chaotic rift spread out. It devoured the void and dismembered the world, presenting a tragic scene of doomsday. This big guy may be scary, but that's only on the surface. The Hero King, who was riding on a pearlescent jewel aircraft, regained some of his shattered confidence. This time, he was not at a disadvantage in the clash between the perfect form Consisanu and obedient parting sword. Are you that happy to be able to block my attack? You even forgot your identity and laughed heartily. Dustless, who was inside the perfect form Consisanu, looked calmly at the Hero King. Following that, the perfect form Consisanu brandished his greatsword once again. How can a mortal like you understand this king's feelings? This is obviously something to be happy about. Without even thinking, the Hero King answered decisively. Up to this point in the battle, he had been crushed by Dustless. Now he had finally turned the tables. Although it was a draw, the Hero King had regained a lot of his confidence. He was grinning from ear to ear. Seeing Dustless's perfect form Consisanu preparing to attack once again, the hero king did not want to fall behind. He raised obedient parting sword in his hand as well. Immortal technique. Dustless's perfect Kinsusanu's aura became dull. Originally, the Uchiha clan's Sharingan was a very evil type, and Kinsusanu gave off a very sinister and gloomy feeling. But this time, with the integration of the Senjutsu, the unique temperament suddenly changed. The complete form Kinsusanu's enormous body was right in front of his eyes, yet it felt like it was far away from him. It felt like it had blended into nature, as if it had become one with nature. Immortal technique, Kinsusanu. With Dustless's words, the perfect Kinsusanu's physique was enhanced once again. Under the hero king's incredulous gaze, it grew another 10 to 20 meters. This is too ridiculous. The hero king's lips trembled as he witnessed the enlarged perfect Kinsusanu. Immediately he felt insulted. Dustless's perfect Kinsusanu from before was not at its peak. This meant that he had deliberately gone easy on him and was looking down on him. Darn thing. The enraged Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. The obedient parting sword in his hand once again pulsed with a red vortex as it gradually enlarged. Enuma Elish. Accompanied by the hero king's rage, a powerful attack came straight at him. It was about to devour the perfect Kinsusanu. What a boring trick. Upon seeing this, Dustless shook his head slightly. Immortal technique, Kinsusu, immediately waved his hand nonchalantly. Boom, boom, boom. A golden saber wind that was several times more terrifying than before flashed. Its might and speed were several times more powerful than before. In an instant, it tore apart the hero king's trusted attack. Puchi. The dark red energy vortexes, which were getting bigger and bigger, were instantly destroyed. It was as simple as tearing a piece of paper. They were annihilated in the blink of an eye. Cracks that were more than 10 meters deep appeared on the ground. It was extremely terrifying. The shockwaves that spread out in all directions even crushed the surrounding mountains into powder. Puchi. It was the same for the hero king himself. His entire body had been penetrated by the saber wind of Kinsusanu. His body had an additional shocking crack and gap. His entire body had nearly been split into two. I'm really sorry. I did not mean to put you in this state. It's just that I was displeased with your petty victory, so I used a little more strength. After dispelling immortal technique, Kinsusanu, Dustless's body landed on the ground. He looked apologetically at the hero king. This bastard's organs had been completely destroyed. His death was only a matter of time. However, the furious strike of immortal technique, Kinsusanu, did not stop there. It continued pressing forward, and with an unstoppable speed, it blasted towards the holy grail that Yanfeng Chili and Wei Gong Chisi were fighting over. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering explosion swept out as the exquisite holy grail was pulverized by Kinsusanu's saber wind. Not even a residue was left behind. The disgusting liquid contained in the holy grail, the evil of this world, also spread out. Indeed, it's easy for a person to do stupid things when angered. Upon seeing this, Dustless smacked his head as he felt a headache coming on. His mind had indeed been thrown into chaos by the hero king's arrogant tone. He had deliberately suppressed the power of Kinsusanu, but such a thing had still happened. No, this isn't my fault. It can only be said that this place is too small. After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly shook his head and pushed all his faults to the back of his mind. This ending isn't bad either. Lying on the ground, the hero king's eyes were turbid. His dying tone was filled with schadenfreude. His abdomen had already been penetrated by Dustless. It was completely over. I'm sorry, Saber. Turning his head to look at Saber, Dustless realized that her body was gradually dissipating. She was about to vanish, but there was nothing he could do about it. After all, the Holy Grail had been destroyed. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.